Buzby.
I've already been here.
Hey, we do know that
Mike.
Captain Sigley is not
Deputy Buzby.
Deputy Busby.
Are we sure?
Hey, Pete, you need to reassure everybody that Captain Sigley is not Deputy Busby.
He's not?
No,
I thought he was.
He's here again. I've never seen him. I've never seen him
And Busby
Deputy
together?
Busby together. So I don't know. Maybe he is.
It's very possible.
Pete, are we having a last club meeting next Wednesday?
I'll check.
I haven't scheduled. I don't know whether I haven't heard.
I haven't seen the agenda yet. Good morning, and thank you for joining us for the April 4th meeting of the Tulare County Board of Supervisors. First thing we will do today is salute the flag of our great country, and that will be followed by a moment of silence. We will be led today by Supervisor Worthley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ready? Salute.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right, we'll kick off Board of Supervisors matters immediately to my right. Supervisor Strickland.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things. Last Tuesday, I attended the open house of Family Services' new Freedom House, which is an excellent drop-in center for youth involved in human trafficking or victims of human trafficking. So thank you again to Family Services for offering that, and we do have some HHSA staff also involved in that project, so thank you. Friday night, I attended the Habitat for Humanity Birdhouse auction. It was once again a packed house and a good cause, raising money to build homes in our community. And then yesterday was my Health Advisory Committee meeting. And as a matter of fact, this week is Healthy Tulare County Week. If you go on the website, you'll find all kinds of activities throughout the county promoting positive nutrition and exercise and everything to help get us healthier. The other thing that happened yesterday at our Health Advisory Committee meeting was we received our 2017 Community Health Assessment. Very interesting. This will be posted probably tomorrow, the next day, hopefully, on the county's website. It's the first time this is happening. It's got some amazing information in it, some of it not too surprising about the health of Tulare County residents and things that we can look into. And the nice thing about this going public is that agencies can now use this to point to some facts when they're looking for grants and other funding related to health. So I encourage folks, I know we all got an electronic copy also, but I encourage folks to take a look at this health assessment for the county. That's it.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Ennis.
Oh, you're kind of sneaking up on me.
I'm going to keep you on your toes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, last week we attended the CalCog meeting in Monterey and got to meet with all the Association of Governments up and down the state and listening to the problems that everybody has and trying to put our heads together and figure out how to get more money from the state and federal government to fix our roads. And, of course, the state is always looking to help us out. They want to charge us more taxes. They want to put penalties on, put a tax on our registration on our vehicles. And it will depend on how old your vehicle is, but if it's a late model and it's a high-dollar vehicle, it could be a lot of money. So I think that we need to be looking at that. I remember the last guy that tried to fool with the registration on our vehicles, Mr. Gray Davis, found himself ushered out of office. So I don't know whether we'll have a consortium of people that will go after him again if they do that, but we'll see. They also want to raise the gas tax. They want to raise the fuel tax. Instead of just taking the monies we already have, like the weight fees, and applying those to transportation, no, they put that in the general fund, and so they can waste more money. So that's not a good thing, but we all need to know what's going on up there, and it's never good when it comes to the San Joaquin Valley. Success Dam has 45,500 acre feet in it. That's down from 62,000 when it peaked out due to the runoff that we had. We're going to try to hold that down. We got plenty of snow in the mountains, and we'll probably still go to capacity. Still trying to get the Corps to approve us so we can sandbag the spillway and put 100,000 acre feet of water in there. So that is something we'll be looking at in the future. I have on Monday, I will have my Success Dam remediation meeting at the Lower Tule, which I chair, and I'll be probably brought up to speed on how that's going and where we're going from there. So I think Porterville was pleased that they've shut the water down to almost a trickle because they've got the J Street Bridge project, which has been on hold for the last 2 months. So hopefully we're going to get that back going forward and get that done and get out of the riverbed before we have the runoffs through the summer. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Worthley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last Thursday, I was able to speak at the Self-Help grand opening for their new program to teach people about buying a new home and the process of how to get their credit in good shape. And it's a great program, was well attended, and it will help people to qualify for homes going in the future. Last Friday, we had a press conference at the Fresno City Council Hall, press hall, to talk about Temperance Flat. 4 different water agencies that utilize the water from the San Joaquin River were there to sign a letter that indicates their cooperation in developing a program and plan on how to operate the Temperance Flat facility if it's constructed. And so that was a major event because we recognize that there will be 3 funding sources for this project. One, we're hoping to gain money from the Prop 1 funds passed by the voters of California, federal dollars through the Senator Feinstein's bill, and then the direct beneficiaries, those who use the water, will need to come up with some additional dollars. And we would not expect them to put money into something unless they can see from an operational standpoint they're going to actually see additional water come to them, primarily in Class 2, but also Class 1 deliveries. So that was a very important event. It was well attended. We had a great press presence there.
You were on TV.
Oh, was I?
They chose you to be interviewed.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
Saw you.
How'd I look?
Look good, Steve. You look good.
All right. Okay.
You used a little lipstick.
Must
but
have
other
done
than
something
that-
to fix it then. All right. This Thursday I will be in Los Angeles for a CSAC executive committee meeting, and I know a large part of the conversation is going to be about transportation, and the proposal that was rolled into the bill that will do all the things that you've talked about in terms of raising the gas tax, raising the registration fees on vehicles, charging an additional $100 for electric vehicles. Those are the things that are on the proposed bill. Would raise about $5.5 billion, I think, of additional revenue. And as I was driving, I happened to be up at my son's house working Saturday, so I was driving an old pickup with a trailer, so I'm in the slow lane of the 99, and as I'm bouncing up and down like this, I'm thinking about those weight fees, that $1 billion worth of weight fees every year that have been siphoned off into the general fund to pay the bonds back on transportation bonds. The people of California voted for general obligation bonds. I know I may be a little bit deep in the weeds, but the point is they basically took money that was dedicated to fixing those kinds of things and have used it for another purpose. And we definitely need to do something about our road systems because they are very, very rapidly deteriorating. And that's all I have.
All right, Supervisor Crocker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last Thursday, Strathmore had a step-up event that was pretty darn well attended. It was nice for me to be out there in a first step-up event in official capacity, and it was good to see all the different county departments that helped out. Officer Busby was there, but I don't know whether or not that was Captain Sigley or not. It was.
Did you see him there?
I did not see him
Well,
there, so
do
it
you ever
is a
see him when
possibility.
Busby's around?
Exactly. It's, the dilemma will continue. And then probation, I know, was there. Many different departments from the Health and Human Services Agency were present, all providing great information to local residents and parents, trying to help people understand the services that we provide as a county and make sure that our youth have other opportunities outside of getting involved with the gang lifestyle. So that was a great event. And last Friday I met with our probation department, and that was really an eye-opening experience to be able to go to the juvenile detention facility, and also to our and I apologize, I know I won't have the name correct, but there was an adjacent youth facility that helped out some of our young men as far as providing some type of training, getting their education, graduating from high school. I was able to sit in on some reading sessions, and they were getting music lessons and trying to learn how to play the guitar and varying skills that they had. And it just it was very touching to be able to see young people that have made some mistakes, but they were trying to get back on the right path, and there was a glimmer of hope there. And then on the flip side of the juvenile detention facility, it's a little less hope over there as far as those individuals hadn't quite reached that point of turning it around. But just hats off to all the staff that was out there. Yesterday I met with a resource management agency staff, and I just thank everyone for taking the time to meet and talk about roads and code enforcement and planning and all of those fun things. And so thank you, Reed and Mike Washam, for taking me around yesterday. I look forward to more meeting with the fire chief tomorrow and others. But on the Habitat for Humanity event that I attended with Supervisor Shuckley, and I was a little disappointed. I asked if we could use the county credit card to make some bids, and she advised that that's probably not a wise decision. So we got that cleared away. Last night I attended the Three Rivers Town Hall, and one thing that's been an issue, and maybe not as much as it was 2 years ago, but they continue to have bears come into the community. Yesterday there was a bear that our sheriff's department helped engage with that came to the elementary school, and so the Fish and Wildlife they responded and removed the bear from the site and went through their procedures. And I don't know the specifics of what their procedures are, but I think I can take a guess as far as what ends up happening with that. But I think really the gist is that the issue is the bears get into people's trash, they eat the trash, and then they become addicted to easy food, and so then they continue to become a nuisance in the community. And so that may be something in the future that we as a board, if it becomes more of a problem, to look into. So with that, we've got a busy week in District 1, Orange Blossom Festival this week, Three Rivers Jazz Affair, and not in District 1, but I'd encourage everyone to go to the Sycon Barbecue on Sunday. So if you don't have any plans for Sunday, go up to the Wildflower Festival, and all the trails and the museums are open, so have a great day up there.
Sure, one thing I forgot to mention. About water, you talk about this weekend. There's a major storm event scheduled for this weekend. They're talking about as much as 1.5 inches to 2 inches of rain. And just to let you know that on the Kings River watershed, at this point, the watershed is 190% of normal. And so there is a great concern about the amount of water and how it will come down. The other issue is subsidence. The Frank Kern Canal, at this point, they can't get more than about 1,700 second feet per south of Tulare County into Kern County because of subsidence. Same problem going north into the bypass, and on the north where the Kings River and the San Joaquin River go north, they were supposed to be able to get 4,000 second feet. They're having trouble moving 3,000 second feet. So they're busily working right now in Fresno County to build up the levees to try to protect the communities of Tranquility and Mendota. But this could be a very interesting summer. We're certainly not out of the woods yet from a flood issue.
Okay. Supervisor Ennis, you're leaning back in.
Well, I was just going to tell Kyler that Supervisor Worthley's an authority on these bears because he's had some close encounters with them at some different meetings we've gone to up in the mountains. So if you need some advice, talk to Supervisor Worthley.
I know I would have liked to be bait.
Well, Supervisor Crocker was talking about United States Fish and Wildlife policy and how to keep bears away from trash cans. Let me know that policy because I have a dog that seems to like the food in my trash can as well. So let me know that policy and what they're doing. and
I'd
I
be
can,
happy to
look into
discuss that in a future closed session.
Okay, all right, sounds good. So a couple of things I wanted to go over. You know, it's as chair of the board, I have the privilege of alternating with Supervisor Ennis on a weekly basis, speaking on KTIP, our local news radio station. And, you know, one of the consistent themes that has been brought up every time I talk to them are complaints about different roads. And so our local road network, I'd like to ask the Resource Management Agency to maybe look at a format of creating, you know, maybe an annual event that's like a regional, more local road forum discussing our road conditions in specific areas of the county. I think if we had that sort of a roundtable discussion and where concerns are brought and the road department is close, or the Resource Management Agency is brought closer to the residents, I think that could have a very positive effect. So I'd like our interim director to maybe look at that, what that could look like going forward. Yesterday I actually had a very surprising couple of resignations presented to me here at the office regarding participation on the Mental Health Board. I served on the Mental Health Board for 8 years, and all of those 8 years, a staple of mental health, at any time a mental health issue or event came up, Dr. Nelson was always there, Dr. Ralph Nelson. And he announced yesterday that he's going to be resigning from the Mental Health Board to focus on some personal issues in his life. So he's going to be a significant loss to that board, and I'm very grateful for his service and all that he's done on behalf of mental health and mental wellness in Tulare County. Also, Mary Medeiros is also resigning, and sure appreciate her time and commitment to the Mental Health Board. So, Supervisor Shuckling, I leave and you get on there, and a bunch of people resign. So, I don't know what's going on. But anyways, this week on Thursday at 10 a.m. at St. Anthony's up in Three Rivers, TCAG will be having a board retreat. That should be a great event. That evening, Thursday evening on April 6th at 6 p.m. at the Visalia Convention Center, the District Attorney's Office will be having its Victims Quilt Unveiling Ceremony. That's always a very moving event, and they do a fantastic job honoring the victims of crime throughout this county over the past year. And then lastly, we do have an audit committee meeting this Friday at 10 a.m. right here. And audit committee meetings are always very lively, well attended. Audit is a subject many people are very interested in, so I look forward to a lively meeting this Friday. With that concludes Board of Supervisors matters. We will now move on to item 2, which is public comments. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on today's agenda. Public comment can and will be limited to 3 minutes. Is there anybody here wishing to speak under public comment? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the board. We will now take up our consent calendar. I do have a request to pull item 11 for separate consideration.
That's what I was going to pull.
And I knew Shuckling was going to pull it, so I wanted to do it first. Anybody else have any, on this board, have any requests for items to be removed or considered separately? Any member of the public? Sure. Council?
Item 7 needs to be approved subject to county council review.
Okay. Item 7 is to be approved subject to county council review. Any additional comments or corrections? If not, the chair will entertain a
No,
motion.
I'd move for approval, balance of consent calendar.
All right, I have a motion from
Second.
Supervisor Ennis, a second by Supervisor Shuckling. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We will now move on to item 11, which is a request to proclaim a local emergency due to flooding. Mr. Jason Britt.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Jason Britt, HSA Agency Director. We're just bringing this item before you to consider a proclamation for local flooding that occurred in the months of January and February. As you might have seen in the paper on Saturday, President Trump has issued his third federal declaration for covering the January 23rd timeframe for flooding that occurred in multiple counties in the state of California. So with that, I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Anyone have any questions or comments? Supervisor Shuckley?
Yeah, sorry. Jason, so we really didn't have like a lot of, about what, $250,000 to $300,000 of damage? Is that typically within the amount to declare an emergency?
The board has discretion to declare or proclaim an emergency at its discretion. Typically, to get federal funding or disaster funding from the state, there is a threshold that is calculated at like $3.17 per resident, which for Tulare County makes it about a $1.5 million threshold. So, however, there are other benefits to the proclamation that could be available through USDA funding for agriculture if they have a 30% or more crop loss. There may be some benefits to individuals who have insurance policies. So I wouldn't limit the scope to just the threshold dollar amount.
And will this cover us going forward also? Because I know with as Chairman Worthley said, with the
Chairman, what are you giving him, a promotion?
yeah
Second.
vote. Former Vice Chairman Worthley said, with the snowpack being so high, once that starts melting, we'll probably see more. Will this cover us for that, for future events?
It will cover. We will assess each event as they occur.
Okay.
So if something were to occur this weekend that resulted in major flooding or disaster that required a proclamation, we would be in here fairly quickly. So again, it's very episodic in OES. It's
okay.
So we're looking right now. We're sort of looking at January and February. If something were to happen this weekend, which is in April, we would be back for a separate proclamation based on those facts.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, because I was under the understanding this is something that we could do on a proactive effort as well. And that's okay. It's not a problem. We can come back, and I think that we should. But for the flooding that has occurred, it has predominantly been in the southwest part of the county, out in the Alpine area. And for some of those landowners, it is truly an emergency, although it may not meet that threshold. But in order for them to be able to qualify for some federal relief or insurance relief, we do have to make this proclamation to get the designation from the governor's office.
So it's not necessarily for the damages like to our roads and whatnot. It may be for private property damage.
For them to see that they may need that,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
I'd like to clarify, there is language that talks about ongoing events, but in order to access, if we were to have an event large enough to need to access California disaster assistance or FEMA funding, we would need to have a separate proclamation based on those facts presented at that moment. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments?
No.
Anyone in the public wish to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for action.
Move to approval.
Second.
I have a request from Supervisor Crocker, a second by Supervisor Worthley, and I will clarify supervisor, not chairman.
Vice Chairman.
Please vote. Vote passes unanimously. We will now move on to our untimed items on our agenda. Take up item number 23 at this time, which is a request from the Tulare County Employees Retirement Association to approve and adopt the recommended employer and employee retirement contribution rates from the Tulare County Employees Retirement Association. Come on, Dave, you got to get up there quicker because I'm still reading. Go ahead.
Very good. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and fellow supervisors. Mr. Spada, Ms. Peterson, very good to see you all again. My name is Dave Keeler. I'm the retirement plan administrator for the County of Tulare. And as Chairman Vanderpool indicated, we are here today to request that the Board of Supervisors implement the new contribution rates for the employers and
Dave, would you swing that microphone towards you a little bit?
In fact, I'll just move myself here.
No problem.
And our recommendation is that you do so effective with the pay period that includes July 1st of 2017. By way of background, especially for the newer supervisors, the contribution rate changes come as a result of an actuarial evaluation that is completed every year by the retirement system. The Tessera board contracts with an outside actuary who does actuarial valuations on an annual basis, dated always as June 30 of each year. Those reports then give the plan quite a bit of different information, but two key issues that are important to your board as well as to the retirement system itself are the funded status of the retirement plan and the change in funded status from year to year, as well as the new contribution rates. And so I'd like to spend a little time this morning in both giving some additional background regarding those two key issues, as well as respond to any questions that the supervisors may have regarding the plan and its overall health and trends that we're seeing develop. The two key areas that come out of the plan that I think of importance to you all are, number one, the funded status of the retirement system. And as of June 30, 2016, the funded status of the Tessera plan is at 83.3% funded, meaning the ratio of our assets in the plan to the projected liabilities, the benefit promises and cost to administer the plan, are at 83% of what is needed in order to pay out future benefits. This is a trend that is showing some decline over the last several years. Our funded status the previous year was at 85%. So it is of some concern as we move forward. But that 83.3% funded ratio is extremely high and very good compared to many other plans, not just in California, but throughout the United States. We are a strongly funded plan compared to our peers. The employee and employer contribution rates is the other area of importance that comes out of the actuarial valuation. And for the employers, we are going to be seeing an increase in contribution rates on an aggregate basis from 14.11% for the current year to 14.83% of covered payroll beginning in fiscal year 2017 and 18. Employees actually will see a decline in their rates, moving from the current rate on the average from 7.56% of pay to 7.39% of covered payroll. So why these changes? Well, beginning with the employees first, the primary reason that the employees are seeing an overall decline in their rates is due to the impact of the PEPRA tier, our Tier 4, with its lower benefit levels. And while the plan or that particular tier has only been in place for nearly 4.5 years now, we are already seeing a larger number of employees that are covered by Tier 4. In fact, as of June 30 of this last year, 25% of our active employees were Tier 4 members. So that is having an impact on contribution rates for the employees. It does not mean, however, that every employee is going to see a decrease in his or her contribution rate, unfortunately, because contribution rates are determined by a number of factors, including, at least at the employee level, including the type of work that an employee does, whether or not he or she is a general member or a safety member, the tier that he or she may be in. Our lower tiers, our earlier tiers, I should say, have higher benefit levels than do Tier 4. But also of importance is the entry age, the age at which a person is when he or she enters the plan. A younger person will pay a lower contribution rate than will an older person who starts with the plan, because that younger person has a longer period of time to finance or contribute toward the retirement plan and pay his or her portion of the future retirement benefit that he or she will receive. On the employer side, there are actually two major changes that are occurring and have been occurring over the last several years that are impacting contribution rates, and one positive influence on the rates. The two negative rate influences come from investment losses in prior years. We are still recognizing some of the investment losses from the 2008, 2009 Great Recession and the decline in investment assets as a result of that. Since then, while there have been years in which the plan's investment performance has been very positive, in fact, in some cases, double over what our assumption would be for the year, it's unfortunate that we have also had years in which we've been below our assumed rate, and in fact have experienced other years in which there have been losses, such as this last year. The other change that is impacting contribution rate for the employers is the investment assumption. The retirement board is of the opinion that a 7.75% expected rate of return on investments was too high. As a result, they implemented a change in the rates that slowly is bringing that down to first the 7.5% level in the next couple of years, and may go lower depending on the actions of the retirement board and the results of future actuarial valuations and triennial experience studies that we have going on. Right now, the rate is at 7.6% and declining from the 7.65% of previous year. That in itself, that change, though appears to be small, is having an impact on the contribution rates for the employers. I mentioned a positive change, and that is, again, the demographic changes that occur as a result of Tier 4, or our PEPRA tier. That's lowering the cost, lowering the overall liabilities of the pension system as we go forward. And because of the number of Tier 4 employees that we have, both employees and employers are seeing an impact on the contribution rates. Unfortunately, for the employer side, the investment losses and change in investment assumptions are dwarfing the positive side of the change in demographics, at least to this point. I was asked to include some additional information in the presentation this morning, just to provide some additional data that might be of interest to the supervisors, as well as to identify some additional trends that we are seeing. One has to do with the actual contribution rate that employers will be paying in 2017, 2018, expressed in dollars. And based on the assumptions that we have and the projections of covered payroll that will exist, and using the contribution rate that will be applied to it, we can tell you that the contribution rate for the employers as a group will be about $38 million, keeping in mind that the county is by far the largest employer that we have that is a plan sponsor of the Tessera plan, but we have two other employers as well. The Tulare County Superior Courts is a employer member, as is the Strathmore Public Utility District with its small number of employees that belong to our system as well. But by far, the county pays the highest share of the employer contribution rates. To give you some comparison, the county's contribution this year, which you in the past, and I've been with the plan for 19 years, so now only one of those 19 years did you do something different. The county has the right to pay its contributions in a lump sum at the beginning of each fiscal year, and has chosen to do that in all but one of the last 19 years. And the rate that you paid this amount this year was $32.1 million through this period of time. The county does pay in advance, but we do a true-up at the end of the fiscal year in order to determine whether or not additional amounts are due from the plan sponsors. So currently, you are paying about a little over $32 million, which could change slightly, but compared to the $38 million that all employers are expected to pay for the next fiscal year. The contribution rate, just to focus on it a little bit more, especially as it impacts the employers, really is made up of two separate components. One which is called the normal cost of the plan. The normal cost would be those amounts that have to be contributed into the plan if all of the assumptions made by the retirement system came into fruition and were met spot on. So that means things like we would meet right to the penny our investment assumption. It would mean that we would know exactly when all of our retirees are going to pass away. It would mean we would know when everyone is going to retire. We would know how many people are going to become disabled, how many people will terminate and pull their money out, how many people will terminate and leave their money in and get a future retirement benefit. Obviously, it's very difficult, I will say impossible, to meet all of our actuarial assumptions spot on. For that reason, there's almost always an unfunded actuarial liability that occurs as a result of not meeting your assumptions. And that typically is an additional cost to somebody, that somebody being the plan sponsors of the system. The employees do not have to pay into financing the unfunded liabilities. The plan sponsors do. So you as plan sponsors have two components to your rate. The normal cost, which is at about 7%, and then funding the unfunded liability over an amortized period of currently 19 years. So over that 19-year period, you're going to add an additional 7.83% to your contribution rates and pay additional amounts as a result, bringing us to the 14.83% rate that we have to be implemented in this coming fiscal year. The unfunded actuarial liabilities is of concern to the retirement plan and to its board and staff. We are seeing increases in the unfunded liabilities that for this coming year are shown at $239 million in unfunded liabilities, up from about 202 for the prior year. It's that difference that makes up this gap between being 100% funded and only 83.3% funded. Again, a very good funded ratio compared to peers, but one that we as a plan and as plan sponsors need to be conscious of because of its increased growth in the unfunded liabilities.
Dave, not to interrupt, but since you brought it up right there, you were talking about the 83.3% funding level. There are two different types of systems. There's the PERS and the 1937 Act. Of our 1937 Act peers and counterparts, how does our 83.3% funded status compare?
We are not the highest, but we are amongst the highest. So when a question like that is asked of me, Supervisor Vanderpool, I like to answer it in two parts. The funded ratio is very good, but you can't just look at the funded ratio. You should also look in comparison to what the contribution rates are. The plan sponsors must pay in order to maintain that level of funded status. And right now, even at 14.83%, Tulare County's funded contribution rate level is by far the lowest amongst all of the 37 county plans, and amongst the lowest, if not the lowest, amongst all plans in California, other than those that are closed and just paying out the remaining benefits to the remaining plan participants. So the good news to this unfunded liability concern is that Tulare County and Board of Supervisors and Board of Retirement has many options available to it to be able to tackle this problem before it becomes one that limits the options that we have going forward. Our concern about seeing unfunded liabilities increase is that it pushes off into the future contributions, hopefully investment performance, that will make up the gap. But if we don't believe or have less confidence that investments will make up the difference, then there's only one other source of funding the system, and that is through higher contributions. Are we going to pay them now, or are we going to push it off to future generations to pay? And that's the question we deal with.
Thank you.
Another concern that has come up in the past, and I know that this is of interest to Mr. Spada, is the level of interest that's being paid on the unfunded liabilities. Because by amortizing these costs over a longer period of time, just as you would a home mortgage, you are paying a level of additional funds in terms of interest on those costs. And based on my calculation, of the $38 million that will be paid in retirement contributions, 29.5 approximately of that will be on interest toward the unfunded liabilities. So a big portion of the annual contribution goes in just meeting the interest payments on these unfunded liabilities, and therefore is something too that the plan sponsors may want to consider as to how do we pay down our unfunded liabilities or deal with this, not in one large chunk all at one time, but maybe in a measured approach that allows us to reduce the amount of unfunded liabilities and save on the interest payments as a result. One final comment that I would like to present to the board, and then I'm more than happy to answer and respond to any questions that you all might have, and that was to look ahead. Mr. Spada was interested in knowing what are the trends that we see going forward that are included in the most recent actuarial evaluation, and there is a page that the actuary provides to us that shows us what we can expect to occur going forward. And on this particular chart, the actuary is indicating that contribution rates for this next year are at the 14.8% that I mentioned, and will continue to increase up to 21.1% as of 2025. At that point, the rates themselves will become somewhat static and remain at a smooth level for the remainder of the amortization period, so about 21%. Just to give you some comparison, I did a study about this same time last year of the contribution rates for all of the 37 Act plans, the county plans that we're a part of, and the average contribution rate for the plan sponsors was 32%. So even at 21%, Tulare County's rates would be comparatively much, much lower than almost all of our sister counties. But nevertheless, it does represent an increase in dollars that goes to the retirement system. And on a dollar basis, we would see the increase going from about $38 million for the new fiscal year up to about $71 million in 2025, and increasing up to as high as $89 million in 2033, even while the contribution rates themselves remain somewhat static and lower than other plans. And this is a result of two factors that impact overall dollar contribution amounts, and that is the rates themselves increase, therefore the dollars that go into the plan increase, but also the covered payroll changes and increases. So as you grant salary increases to employees, or the county hires more employees and brings in more members, the dollar amount of contributions will change and will grow at a faster rate than does the contribution rate itself. These charts that the actuary provide, I think, are very informative. They help us to have good insight as to what we can expect to occur going forward. But I must tell you all that I would take them with a significantly large grain of salt. And that is because the charts assume that we will meet all of our assumptions going forward with one change, and that is a continued decline in the interest rate assumption. We don't pay benefits on the base of assumptions. We pay benefits and charge contribution rates on the basis of actual experience. And if our actual experience is different from what we assume and project them to be, that's going to have the impact on your contribution rates. That's going to have the impact on the plan's funded status. And that's going to give us the insights as to what we need to do in order to make sure that the benefit promises going forward can be met. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my comments. If there's any questions that you all may have, I'd be happy to try to.
Anybody but Supervisor Worthley have a question or comment?
He's the vice chairman.
I'm kidding. I know how passionate Steve is about this. Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks for being here today. And I was curious. I know last year we recognized a 1% loss. So I would say the retirement board did. And how did we compare with our peers last year?
Worse than peers, but nobody met their assumption.
I know PERS ended up being down 0.6% or some 0.06%. I mean,
we were lower than peers. We were probably in the bottom quintile.
And I guess there must be some thought about how that's going to hopefully turn around this coming year. Because again, going back to our assumptions, I mean, we could be. I realize interest rates are terribly low, but just getting general interest rates would have done better than that. But obviously, we have an actively managed account, which means you have greater risk. When we have greater risk, these kind of things do happen.
So the impact on our performance last year was largely due to two major factors. One, an overweight in investments in international equities as opposed to domestic, although we split our equity investments 50-50 between international and domestic. And many other plans in California and throughout the United States had a higher weight toward domestic equities, and that was the right bet, if you will, in that domestic equities performed much better than did international. Our board has looked at that, but is of the opinion that going forward and into the future, on an international basis, on a global basis, equities will perform better internationally than they will just domestically, even though the short-term results are.
And that you kind of answered my next follow-up question, which is, I mean, I realize sometimes stocks go up, they go down, but the intrinsic value may be there, and it may be, you don't want to just sell off because they're low value when there's a good chance they're going to be restored in the future. One of the things I want to make sure our fellow board members understand, when we talk about this unfunded liability, we are being charged by the retirement board the assumed rate of return. So this $29.5 million of interest payment represents 7.6% interest on the unfunded liability. I bring this up because my son buys a home and he pays 4% interest on a 30-year mortgage. So we are paying a very high rate of return to the retirement board in a market that's very different from that. And that's one of the things we need to, I think, explore going forward. As Dave has talked about the fact that, I mean, we're in a good position. We could be in a better position. We're in a good position, but we're also moving into a negative situation. And quite frankly, I don't see any way out of that negative situation for some period of time. Because as you say, we have a 10-year smoothing period. We still have 2 or 3 years of those terrible losses in 2009 to recognize that have yet to be recognized, and you can't earn your way out of that. And certainly when you have a negative 1% last year, you're going the wrong direction. I mean, that was the worst year since the Great Recession, as I think that the retirement board has had. So again, we only recognize 1/10 of that. We're going to be recognizing that loss going forward for the next 10 years. So we're in a situation where we're going to see I don't know if there's a projection in your calculation by your actuary. How low do they project we're going to go in terms of our funded ratio? Do they provide that looking forward?
These charts don't provide that information on the funded ratio, but they do project that if we do meet our assumptions going forward, which is all they can usually do on the actuarial side, that we will be at 100% funded level in 19
If I were to
years.
graph it, it would be like this. If this is where we are and this is 100%, we're going to go like this. In other words, we're going to continue to drop it's almost impossible to earn our way out of the situation in the short term. Short term being the next 5 to 10 years.
The chart that you are looking for is the inverse of the contribution rates. Because again, the plan can only be funded through two sources, contributions and investment returns. So if we're seeing that the contribution rates are going up, then that means that inversely the funded ratio is likely going down. So we will see a lowering of our funded ratio, but with a bright light at the end of this 19-year period, meaning that, again, if we're able to continue to meet assumptions going forward, that we'll be able to reach 100% funded status.
And of course, that is the $64,000 or $64 billion question, because meeting those many jurisdictions have determined that 7.6, 7.5 is unsustainable, and that PERS has reduced theirs to over the next 3 years to 7%, and CalSTRS is reducing theirs to 7.25%. So we're high, and the long term, it doesn't look like it's going to get. We're going to see interest rates climbing to that point for some time, and so this is a concern, I think, for this board. Because at the end of the day, we're the guarantors. We're the ones that have to. This board has to come up with the dollars, not the employees, the employers. And quite frankly, right now, the ongoing contribution rate is not meeting the objective. When you're having losses, as we are experiencing, the contributions by the county and by the employees are not meeting that. So we're pushing off to future generations or future employees and the county the responsibility of paying for, well, I guess we're pushing off to the county, not to the employees, but to the county, these losses in the future. And so I that's why we're looking at, having some work done to evaluate our situation, to look at the various options that we may want to look at. This county some years ago did go out with a modest pension bond obligation, which has been paid back. And, we just need to look at some other options, because the loan arrangement we have with the retirement board in the marketplace of today is really not that great of a situation from the county's perspective. Now, from your perspective as a retirement board, I would hate to think how much you would have lost last year if we hadn't pumped in 7.65% interest on the unfunded liability. That was a lot of earnings. Is that right? Was that treated as earnings to the retirement board?
Yes.
So you had all the earnings on the unfunded liability, and yet you still lost 1% overall.
Correct.
So from that standpoint, I guess we're helping to prop up the system a little bit. But I don't think that's really the role of the county board of supervisors. Our role really is to look at, you establish reasonable assumptions of rates of return and things that we expect to be there, and then we figure out how can we do the best to meet that obligation. And one of the things I'm hoping that we can look at doing at the end of the day would be to not reduce our contribution amount to the retirement board, but to use some other means of prepaying your rates, the money that we have owed to you, and then use the savings to buy down our rate of return. Because that will make the system much stronger. The lower we can get that rate down, the stronger the system, the easier it will be for your group to be able to meet the target. Right now, you have to engage in you're in a challenging marketplace to try to achieve 7.6% rate of return. If you only had to achieve 7%, I shouldn't say only, that still would be challenging, but not as challenging as a 7.6. So that's my global picture, which I hope we can come up with some resolution here, is to make the situation go from good to great, or good to better, because I think we have the opportunity of doing that, and I look at that differential in interest rates as being the opportunity.
So there's an awful lot there, and I'm not quite sure where to begin in response, because largely we would agree exactly with what you said, Supervisor Worthley. And in fact, as you know, we've had these conversations in the past, and we've talked about the various options, including the issuance of pension obligation bonds in a good environment for the county to use as perhaps some sort of a contingency reserve to meet those periods of time in which the retirement plan doesn't meet its own assumptions, and to keep that fall in funded status from going further, setting maybe a floor and saying, regardless of what happens, we will pump additional contributions into the plan to make sure that we stay at this level until investment returns do improve. On the subject of investment returns, you're correct. We lost 1% last year, but as of today, we are up over 7.8%. So we're exceeding our assumption for this year. That's the nature of investments, and that's where I think that the Board of Supervisors and the Board of Retirement really need to have perhaps more of a meeting of the minds, because the question for us on the retirement side, you could say that we are the investors because we put the money out. But I would say that the true investor is the Board of Supervisors and the plan sponsors. We make the decisions, and we have to determine what your level of risk tolerance is in order to know that we can move into asset classes that may be riskier, may have periods of time in which they do better or worse than what we would like to see happen. But what is your risk tolerance? Is 7.6% is too high for the plan sponsor, knowing that you will have to pay higher contributions if we don't meet our investment returns? Then what is the level of comfort that you have? Is it 7.0%? That I don't think you will have a problem with the retirement board in lowering its assumption rate to 7%. But as you very well know, and most of the other supervisors here have been on this problem long enough that they understand as well, it's going to have a tremendous impact on the rate of contributions that the county has to pay. Maybe that's okay. Maybe given the fact that our rates in Tulare County are so much lower than they are at other systems, maybe you're ready to make that move. But that's the type of discussion we need to have in order to determine what our options really are for moving forward, including refinancing some of the unfunded liability and or just paying higher contribution rates.
I want one last thing. I don't mean to be negative toward the retirement board, because we've had a very good relationship with the board. They've worked very closely with us when we've had difficult times of smoothing to longer periods of time and working with us in terms of setting rates. And you're exactly right. I mean, from the retirement board standpoint, they might say, heck, this is way too high, we're just going to drop it. And they have the authority to do that. And instead, they've elected to work with us to come up with a mutually agreeable sort of situation. So I certainly want to commend the retirement board for the good working relationship we have with the Board of Supervisors. And I don't mean to be negative. I'm trying to look at this thing realistically, right? Sure. In the real world we live in, what can we do to make it better? And I just see this opportunity on the differential on interest rates as maybe being that tool. But because I know it's going to be, it's difficult for us to come up. We're climbing this year. We're going to look at be climbing. The projections are we'll be continuing to climb. These are not insignificant amounts. Just to put it in perspective, about a 1% pay raise to our employees equates to about $1 million. So when we have to come up with an additional $5 million, you do the math, what that means for our employees. How are we supposed to be able to give them higher salaries if we have to take the same money that we would have available to pay on salaries and pay it to the retirement system? They go hand in hand. And so, the goal here is not to beat up on anybody. It's to look for what are the other alternatives that we might come up with that can make this system even stronger and better for the county and for its employees and for the retirement board.
I feel the same way as you do, sir, and I think our trustees would all feel the same way, that we've had a wonderful relationship with the Board of Supervisors and TAO's office. It's been mutually beneficial, and I see no reason why it won't continue being so in the future.
Anyone else have any other comments? Questions or comments?
Steve's
been pretty
what
thorough.
I was going to say. He took the words right out of my
I was
mouth.
going to, he was talking about giving a global picture. He was pretty detailed in his painting of whatever picture he had in his mind. I was going to agree with that. See, No, I'll tell you, Dave Keeler, the retirement board administrator, lobbied me to make sure that Steve didn't get on the retirement board. Otherwise, the retirement board for meetings would be very, very long on a daily basis. Mr. Spada.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by once again thanking and complimenting you, Mr. Keeler, on an excellent and informative presentation. I also appreciate very much your addressing some of the questions that have been put to you and they were handled very well. If I may, I would just like to make a few observations. With regard to the 19-year plan, as we affectionately refer to it, that is the plan by which there is the estimate to pay down the unfunded liability. Is that correct? All right.
That is correct.
And an important comment that you made that I want to reaffirm very clearly is that there is an assumption that if we don't make our investment returns, that there will be an increase to that unfunded liability. So the amount that's projected to pay off during the 19-year period will increase if during that period the investment returns are not achieved.
The one-word response to that question is yes, but.
That was 2 words.
Yeah, I apologize. I used 2 words there. Keep in mind that the assumptions have a net effect. So while we may not always meet our interest rate assumption, which is our investment return assumption, if we meet it close enough but are below, just slightly below, other changes, other actuarial gains may cause us to be able to have a positive gain for that particular year. So it's not 100% certain that just because a plan, any plan, doesn't meet its investment return assumption, that they're going to see an increase in the unfunded liability. There are other factors, other things that could mitigate that, such as maybe a combination of salary increases are lower than what was expected for that particular year. Maybe inflation is lower than what it was expected to be for that year. These have some mitigating impact on one single assumption, which by far is the most influential. The investment rate assumption is the most influential assumption that we have. But it can be offset to some degree and maybe even overcome by other changes that could offset the decline in the investment returns that we expect to get. But for the most part, your statement is absolutely correct.
I have another question and a follow-up. With regard to the requested amount of the contribution, about $37 million this year, traditionally the county has been prepaying that amount early on in the fiscal year. If after the true-up there is an overpayment, is it true that the remainder is not refunded back to the county, but it's retained by the plan sponsor?
That is true, and it is because of the Internal Revenue Code regulations that govern defined benefit plans such as ours. But it is retained, but it also acts as a credit toward the next year's retirement contribution.
Very good.
So if there was a $500,000 true-up that was to the benefit of the county because you overpaid, we would reduce the next year's contribution by that $500,000 so that, in effect, you are getting credit for it.
Thank you. Then looking at the resolution that is before the board today, the county is not obligated to prepay the entire amount, let's say, at the beginning of the fiscal year. We could pay it over time.
Yes, that is correct.
Very good. The final point is this. Through the leadership of this board, in particular the board chair and vice chair, the county is in the process of preparing a strategic financing plan. One of the elements or components of that plan is to address the very issue that we're talking about today, which is retirement. And our first meeting is going to be April 11th, which is kind of a kickoff meeting to outline what we're doing. But it is projected, at least from this office, that during the May meeting, the ad hoc committee that's established, which includes the board chair and vice chair, will address the retirement issue. So we're just informing you of that this board has established its own ad hoc committee of 2 supervisors to address, among other things, the retirement issue. That is also to say that we appreciate, this office, this board really appreciates the ad hoc committee that has been established between Tessera and the Board of Supervisors to work through these issues. So we're saying we'd like to see that continue, but also we've established our own ad hoc committee to start delving into what are the options, what are the approaches that we should be considering, and then we can discuss them at the joint ad hoc committee. So I'd just like to confirm that.
Thank you, and if there's any assistance that we can provide from our office to that new committee, we'd be more than happy to do
There
so.
are a number of questions that we've been organizing, and we'll probably get them
I was
within
anticipating
the next few.
That laundry list will come to you soon, Dave.
But I'd like to conclude by saying the collegial and professional relationship as between the CAO and the professional staff of retirement, the retirement board has been outstanding. So thank you.
Took the words right out of my mouth, Mr. CAO. Thank you very much for a great presentation, Dave. I get to see you on a semi-weekly basis and expect no less from you than what you present at our retirement board meetings. But from this Board of Supervisors perspective, that was one of our goals that we laid out for this year, was the adoption of a strategic financing plan that will address, really we talked about 3 or 4 legs of a stool, primarily a retirement board being one of them, workers' comp. Also, we want to talk about the sheriff's department and staffing the jails in the future that we're going to be having to. So we have many different issues that we are going to be addressing, but this retirement issue and the unfunded status is so significant to us, and your illustration of the climbing of the employer contributions over these next few years, and basically almost doubling probably within 5 years, is significant. And this county has to be mindful of that and how we fund that doubling in retirement contributions from the employer side. So I appreciate the presentation and look forward to the actions and collaborations that will occur in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will now get on to our 9:30 timed item.
Take action on
We do need to take action on
Motion to
this.
approve.
Do you want to make that motion? We have a motion from Supervisor Worthley, a second by Supervisor Shuckling. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now get to our 9:30 timed item, item number 3, which is a request from the Resource Management Agency to deny the appeal filed by Robert Mata and affirm the Planning Commission's approval of special use permit number PSP 16-028 for a contractor storage yard. Mr. Washington.
Thank you, Chairman, CAO, and County Council. I'm Mike Washington, Tulare County RMA. Today we have before your board for consideration is appeal of special use permit PSP 16028 for Bobby Tracy for a contractor storage yard located near Wood Lake. Little background on the situation. There was a code violation for the installation of 2 C trains without permits, construction of a cabana, a shed, and a barn without building permits, and a violation of Section 9.6 of the Ordinance Code in the AE 20 zone for operating a contractor storage yard without first securing a approved special use permit. Actions needed to correct the violation were to obtain the proper building permits and an approval of a special use permit. And the project went to a project review committee in May of last year. A couple neighbors appeared in opposition, said that it didn't comply with the CC&Rs of their development, submitted an application for the use permit in June. Building permits throughout this process where they were working with county planning or building and housing department to get their building permits as built in place. They were finally signed off in December of last year. During this process for the public review of the use permit, there was 7 comment letters that we received. 5 were in support of the project, and 2 letters shared concerns regarding the project. The project went to the Planning Commission for public hearing on February 22nd and was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission. And on March 3rd, Robert Mata appealed the decision. So this is why we are here today. Show a few aerial shots just to get situated with the location and the surroundings. This is The names there, Bobby Tracy in blue, that's the site, the location of the project. The names in white are letters that we received in support of the proposal, and in the yellow were the two that had concerns with the proposal. This shows the Robert Mata's property to the north, and Bobby Tracy's where the site is. There you can see the side photos show some of the frontage of Bobby Tracy's house and the location. This is Robert Mata's location at the end of the cul-de-sac. Up beyond, he has quite a bit of shrubbery bordering his southern, adjacent to his house, between him and the adjacent parcel. Again, this is the site of the project. I have let's see here if we can. This is the screening from looking from this is the adjacent parcel to the north, looking to the project. You can see the fence in the background that is under construction still at this point in time, I believe, if it's not fully constructed now. And this would be on the south side of that same fence. Drive approach into the contractor storage yard area on Mr. Tracy's property.
Push.
This is the road, the private road out front. This is looking north on the road. And this is looking south down to the county maintained road down here. So an appeal was submitted to your board on March 3rd by Mr. Mata. The documents that he presented for the appeal were the same packet that he presented to the Planning Commission at the public hearing, and that the commissioners considered fully before they made any action on the matter. The one exception was there was a letter that he'd submitted from Jeff Seward that he did not submit to you. When you actually read that letter, it was actually in support of the project and the property rights of Bobby Tracy, so that was omitted from your package, but it had gone to the Planning Commission. So the appeal packet basically includes a letter from Mr. Mata's attorney dated April 5th from 2016. I'll have to qualify that as his former attorney. A 1976 public work memo regarding the street construction standards for that private road easement. Board of Supervisors resolution from 2009 regarding the interpretation of the zoning policy regarding contractor storage yards. The series of code enforcement letters for this particular matter. A letter from Mr. Mata to the RMA dated in September of last year, and 9 different photographs. A letter from Mr. Mata's attorney dated April 5th of last year made a request and a claim that Mr. Tracy must stop his activities and that the activities violated county land use regulations and the parcel's covenants, conditions, and restrictions, and is a private nuisance. Specifically, the letter identified the following violations: operating a business, operating a contractor storage yard, operating a motocross track, and using and displaying an unreasonable amount of decorative holiday lighting at Christmas. Now, there hasn't been any further comment regarding the lighting. Well, actually, some of the neighbors had said they enjoy that, but there really hasn't been any discussion of that, and there has been no other comment about the motorcycle track at all. So I don't think those two items are really an issue at this point. So the project has been brought into compliance with the use permit, and the county does not regulate CC&Rs, nor does it make findings about a private nuisance. Mr. Mata actually stated and put in the record during his testimony in the public hearing that he's completely aware that the county cannot enforce the restrictions, nor is it our responsibility to do so. However, most of the arguments still go back to the CC&Rs throughout the history in the record. To further clarify, although Mr. Mata objects to the project, he really didn't make a claim that the project cannot and does not comply with county building codes or zoning ordinances. Mr. Mata has applied and been approved and had final inspections for all the building permits associated with this project. He continues to develop the site in compliance with our zoning ordinance.
You said Mr. Mata, but you meant Mr.
Oh, I'm
Tracy.
sorry. Yes, Mr. Tracy, correct. Code violation has been closed on January 4th as all the requiring building permits were finalized. The oversized equipment that was on the site has been removed with the exception of a couple of pieces of equipment that are being utilized for site preparation that will be removed once that is completed. And Mr. Tracy has made application, paid for all the compliance fees, and received conditions of approval from the use permit, which Mr. Mata has stated in the record will assist in reducing any potential impacts to the neighborhood from the proposed use. As far as CEQA goes, Mr. Mata opposed the project, but he didn't really make a specific show of violation of CEQA or the county's development standards. The chief environmental officer for the county determined that it was a category exemption, and the Planning Commission considered that and approved the exemption. And under CEQA, the transportation traffic potential impacts are analyzed as far as the number of trips, not as opposed to the potential for surface degradation on that private road or road maintenance. The project generates less than 100 trips that would be required by the county's general plan to require a traffic study. The project generates less than 50 trips, which is required by Caltrans to generate a traffic study. And there's been testimony in the record that Mr. Tracy has made improvements to the road and maintains it in a better condition than the road has ever seen. And I did show those two pictures of the current condition of the road. Furthermore, the county street construction standards are consistent with what they were back in the 70s. So the standards remain the same. Public Works has reviewed the project with no comments or special requirements. Appellant has failed to show finding of actual visual or noise or dust impacts to his property. He's opposed to the project, but he hasn't made any claim of noise or dust or visual directly related to the project. Testimony from 5 other neighbors suggests that they do not experience the same concerns as Mr. Mata. The testimony given by the neighbor to the immediate north was mixed in that she said that Mr. Mata has really improved the neighborhood, improved the road, but she says she can see an industrial area, and she's concerned that might affect or impact her property value. However, that is just speculative at this point, but we consider all factors. There's additional testimony that, others have talked about the improvements that Mr. Tracy has done in the neighborhood. The project's subject to conditions of approval, which include the days and hours of operation, the maximum number and types of stored vehicles, the maximum number of employees, fencing around the perimeter to screen the facility, that no manufacturing, fabrication, or retail sales can occur at the site. And we've added an additional condition that there will be monthly inspections of the site during the first year of operation. Now, with that, we received a letter late last night from Richard Harriman, an attorney representing Mr. Mata, and staff has been working through the night, and we're still working on trying to address some of the comments that he put into record. And I will do my best right now to do that. The project and process was handled per the policies, guidelines, and laws in Tulare County and the state of California without exception. This is the way that we handle all use permits in the county. The appellant and the appellee were both involved in the process to remedy, abate, and correct any of the known violations on the property. So my initial response is that in his introduction, Mr. Harriman correctly states that the appellee was in violation of the county code for having a contractor storage yard without a special use permit, and the county concurs with that. We issued letters of violation and outlined a way to corrective action. Procedurally, Mr. Harriman failed to note that the application for the project review committee was made in March and appeared before the committee in April of 20th. prior to the April 20th meeting, planning staff had determined that this was not a project under CEQA, and the PRC fact sheet indicated that a CAT exempt was selected as the appropriate level of review. He glosses over the whole process to make it appear that the county was not diligent in persecuting the violation or in not considering a CEQA. We fully considered both. We stepped up and had our normal code enforcement procedures. The letter states that, well, he didn't apply until June. Well, the fact is he applied in March for the PRC, which is the first step before getting to the application for the use permit. So this was all done in a timely manner. Secondly, he's talking about the building permit approval process. Furthermore, to abate any violations, the county staff met with Mr. Tracy and diligently inspected the site in May, having him remove all of the oversized equipment and submit for building permits. The applicant received the final sign-off, as I said, in December of last year, none of which, as ministerial permits, required any additional CEQA for the building permits for those three structures that we talked about earlier. Significant impacts and wetlands. Mr. Harriman said the entire argument centers on the filling in the back area of the property, which he speculates is a seasonal wetland based on observation from a non-expert, Robert Mata. And he cites the Army Corps' wetland delineation manual to give some sort of a credence, some value to that. Well, the facts are that it's not in, there is no delineated wetlands according to the maps that we've pulled up. There's no seasonal stream or anything running through Mr. Tracy's property. In fact, the Antelope Creek that was mentioned in the EIR that was done in 1975, which, by the way, is a 3-page document, which was approved by what back then approved parcel maps was the project review or parcel map review committee. So it was a whole different process back there. Secret had a lot of different issues and processes then. So the Antelope Creek that was mentioned in the EIR was not on Mr. Tracy's property. It was to a property to the east and south of his property, and it ran across the back of that. It has since been channelized so it doesn't freely flow, and then it has a culvert under the county road and continues on its way. Mr. Tracy's property does lie in the 100-year floodplain, so there can be an occasional flooding event, but not that it wouldn't rise to the level or the frequency to be placed in the jurisdiction of the Army Corps or even a wetland under the Central Valley Regional Control Board's authority. As I said, we've pulled the maps for it. Nothing is on there. So as such, it wouldn't require a Section 404 permit or a Section 401 permit because of, as I said, it was just an occasional flooding, and the potential there would be, it wouldn't warrant forensic research to look at and see if there's fairy shrimp that was there, just of a speculative nature from the attorney. The cumulative effects and air quality. To further cause delay, the appellant makes the argument that air quality emissions from the project, including 4 forklifts, 2 backhoes, 5 water trucks, and the vehicles moving the equipment, should be studied for its cumulative impact on air quality in Tulare County. Without any evidence that the equipment exceeds any air district or Tulare County CEQA thresholds, and given that required storage yards throughout Tulare County do this level analysis, that this would be a potential violation of the appellee's due process rights. And again, the Air District was completely consulted on this project, had no comments. They had no concerns with this project as it was approved. Finally, the EIR, and there's a comment in there from Mr. Anderson, one of Public Works staff, that mitigation measures may need to be made for this. That was an error. He put that in first in the PRC response to comments, because that's what we initially look at the review committee. And then once it was determined the number of trips, the volume, and whatnot, that it doesn't rise to that level, and he doesn't have a concern. Furthermore, Mr. Anderson attended the Planning Commission itself and had the ability to chime in if there was anything that he had concerns about, and there wasn't. The two findings that the EIR made was that there was an impact to agricultural conversion of ag to urbanized uses because it was originally a 40-acre parcel being divided into 8 5-acre parcels. So that was one impact. The other impact was potential damage to property because of potential flooding, because of the flood zone. The map had conditions of approval, such as identifying a buildable area outside the flood plain. So that's why the houses on the west tend to be up towards the front of the road, because the floodplain is towards the back of those properties. And again, he talked about some conditions of approval, which we already have in the record. As far as lighting, we have lighting requirements, we have hours of operation, and those types of things. So what staff would be recommending at this point is for your chair to open the public hearing, hear any testimony that from anybody here, and then close the public hearing and have staff come back to your board in a couple of weeks with findings and written findings and clarifications for that denial.
Okay, great. Any questions from board members before I open the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing at this time and ask if there's anyone interested in speaking. Please do come forward, state your name and address for the record. Public comment can will be limited to 3 minutes. Both microphones work.
Okay, my name is Robert Mata. I live at this address of 20800 Avenue 352 there in Woodlake. And as Michael Washam has indicated, I'm the target at this point. Now, I have a question here since I'm very limited time. What was Michael's recommendation here at the very end? I did not understand
his recommendation was to open the public hearing.
Yes.
We'll take public comment at this time. And then we will end and close the public hearing so that he can go back and prepare findings and a response based on the latest information raised by your attorney.
Okay, so that we're talking about postponing this for a couple of weeks in terms of...
It would be continued for a couple of weeks
good.
for a formal decision.
No?
For the formal decision, the findings would be brought back, but no formal action will be taken as to an up or down today.
Okay, very good.
That
is basically all we're asking so that we can sit down with him, our attorney, and all parties interested or affected by this and have a meeting, because this is one of the things that he denied. The Planning Commission asked that the Tulare County staff set a meeting up with all parties concerned and that we would come back at a later date. And that's basically all we're asking right now, that nothing move. There would be no negative impact on Mr. Tracy because he's been operating without a use permit. He hasn't been there has been no code enforcement on that, so he'll continue to do that for a short period of time. And if we can do that, that'd be fine.
Mr. Mott, I was just informed by our attorney that this board could take action today, subject to the findings that will be coming back. And also, you are not limited to 3 minutes. So, if you would like, if you have additional items,
if I might just add to it. Sure. Also, the way that works is normally we make a recommendation and then have it come back for findings. Mm-hmm. The public hearing is closed, but you have the right to come back to comment on those responses back by the RMA, the findings themselves.
Okay. Yes, because if I was, like I said, all we're asking for is just we brought up some additional information. Michael's asking for some time to review that. That would give us time to sit down with him, as well as bringing Mr. Tracy in and the other neighbors, and we could sit down. Hopefully, some remedy could be come to without. Excuse me, I'm kind of nervous up here. This is not my cup of tea. So anyway, that's basically all we were asking for. If we could have you hold your final decision.
Okay.
On this for a later date so that we have time to work with Michael Washam and the RMA staff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Additional public comments?
Good morning. I'm Bobby Tracy. I'm the 20800 Avenue 352, Lot C. I'm leaving it all in your guys' hands. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I had some violations at first, but I've done everything without struggle or without anything to make compliance. I put up fences, put up shrubs. I've done everything to try to come in compliance with the county. That's all I got to say.
Any additional public comments? What's that? Okay. Welcome back, Mr. Mata.
I have a question. I have a question for him.
Well, I was just informed that that it's not necessary that you might come with a decision, that you might make a decision now.
Sure.
But I need to introduce the items.
Yeah.
You know, at first this may seem like a neighbor against a neighbor dispute, but it doesn't compare to the things that you folks have been dealing with here that I've heard. But this is more than that. This is a quality of life, a way of life, and a standard of life. I've been living there for 37 years. There's the two adjacent people next to Tracy have lived there for 32 years, and for 25 years. We've all maintained a single residence with open land, as Mr. Washam had pointed out on his screen. You can see that there's a home, and everything else is open. It's all agricultural, pasture. It's grazing. I've even raised oats on several of the other units. And everyone, even the people who have signed letters of approval to this, also maintain open ground. Now, if we think this is such a great idea, then maybe we should, this is being sarcastic, is put Bob Tracy's storage yard out in front so that everyone can share in the wealth. But that doesn't seem so. The 5 letters of support, 4 of which live on the east side, only see the front of Bob Tracy's house. He never asked or got any support of the people who live on the west side, on the same side of the road that he does, because they are the ones that are affected greatly, and mostly we get the visual, the noise, and we are now losing the aesthetic look that we've established for 37, 40 years. There's also a 5th individual that was asked, but he lives 5 acres of olive trees between him and Tracy. So he does not get impact. The question was asked by Robert Tracy's form letter of approval, does this have an impact on you? Well, of course not. If you live right in front of him, you don't see anything in the back, so it does not have an impact on them. If the question was asked, like Jeff Seward was, who assigned a letter of approval, who is the furthest away and has all the other homes to form a barrier so he cannot see or hear any of the activity, he was asked, if this was being built next to you, would this be an issue? He said, this could cause an issue if it's built right next to him. All the people that approve it do not have any impact on them. They only see Bob's beautiful brand new house out in front, or a remodel home, well landscaped. In fact, it's so pretty and so well landscaped that it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, because everything else is pretty gravel road, dirt road, open pasture land. You know, it's not the city being brought to the county. That's basically what he's done. The photos that were represented will indicate of what is existing, what has, I think the term is, and I'll probably use it wrong, a precedent has been set of what type of living style that we're all used to. I personally bought the 5 acres 40 years ago with the intent of living my golden years in peace, in harmony, and in an agricultural community. I did not ask anyone else to change their ways. I didn't ask the Olive Orchard or the Orange Orchard rancher that he would now have to stop using his wind machines because I live there now. Now we have somebody, Bob Tracy, who has bought there twice. Once on the east side, one on the west side, now who's come in and says, hey, we're going to change the rules of the game. All we'd ask that he have some consideration and speak to all the neighbors and say, this is what I plan to do. How can I make it work? We have had none of that. And as Mr. Washington says, that I have not done a real good job in presenting issues, but hopefully Richard Harriman has brought up some issues here that will have to be dealt with or will need some more discussion, and that will give us an opportunity for some kind of a mutual agreement. We've also asked for some additional modifications to this. And so all we're asking for is, like I said, is that you give us the opportunity to sit down with the Tulare County staff and Tracy, Mr. Tracy, and see if we can work this out. You know, because we do have a lifestyle that's been set there for 37 years. And now we're asking someone to change it. Tracy has the ability with the CCNRs to simply get 3/4 of the majority, which would be only the 4 people that are on the west side of the road. That'd be myself, Russo's, Frames, and himself. All he has to do is get 3 of those individuals to agree with him, and he can eliminate the restrictions entirely. Amend them, change them, do anything like that, or just simply get rid of them. So that's all I ask. Get the majority of the individuals that live on the same side of the road that he does, that are on the same parcel map, and eliminate the CCNRs if they are in the way. I would be very content with that, because that's the majority and the majority rules, you know. But, you know, I had a whole bunch to say. I just kind of feel that this is probably not the level at which we should be dealing with this item, this particular issue, and that it should be back down at the RMA level. That's all I'm asking for. So it's kind of like I said, for myself, it's kind of an emotional item. It's not something that you should probably be dealing with. I'm just asking for the opportunity that we can bring this back down another level and work it out amongst ourselves. And that's pretty much all I can say, but thank you anyway. It probably doesn't add to anything.
I think Supervisor Strickland had a question.
Well, he sort of answered, when you say about a remedy, what would be your ideal remedy? For him to remove everything, or? No, I know that's probably impossible. I'm not looking for that. A remedy would be working on the modifications or the conditions that were set previously, and then taking a look at the proposed conditions that we've added on to hammer that out. But in order to do that, we'd have to sit down with Tracy, his attorney, I would believe, or just simply the Tulare County staff. That'd be one item. And the other thing would be, at that point, that I would ask of all the other homeowners on that particular parcel map, is to say, hey, if we don't want the restrictions, let's get rid of them. Let's all sign a piece of paper that says let's get rid of them, and it's a done deal. You know, it's so that we don't have to be dealing with it. My other 2 neighbors, like myself, are senior citizens, and we bought this property so we could live out our golden years in just, you know, nice community. It's an island at this point. It's right up against the city limits. It's surrounded on three quarters and almost completely on the fourth side. It's surrounded by agricultural land, orchards of olives and orange trees. You're not going to find that anyplace anymore. Once we do this, it's gone. It is gone. So. That, I don't know, did I answer your question regarding what I would accept? Yeah, you did. Now, do you have any improvements on, it's hard, on this map, I keep wanting to make it bigger like it's an iPad, and it doesn't work that way, so. It's called old school. It's old school, yeah. Do you have, it's hard to tell, are there buildings and whatnot on your property?
On my property, I have the original buildings that I built when I built 40 years ago.
The home.
Yeah, the home.
Are there any
carport.
outbuildings like sheds or shops
I have,
or anything?
yeah, I do. I'm sorry.
Or-
I have 3 pieces of chain link fence that I put a lean-to roof on.
I put a what?
A lean-to roof
Okay,
on,
okay.
just a
Yeah.
metal roof. They were 3 gates of 12 and 15 feet, and I just made a wall and put a roof on. That's what I have, which is probably illegal.
Did you get a permit? Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Did you get a permit?
I'm thinking about that.
I'm kidding.
I did
Backtracking
not.
on that lean-to, huh?
Well, I'm not sure. It's been a little difficult to find out whether I need one or not because it's not completely enclosed.
We can find
it's chain
out.
link. It's chain link fence.
Okay.
We can start a code violation right now. if you
Yes.
want.
And I'd clearly knock it down right now too, if
All right.
that's what it takes.
Thank you, Mr. Mata. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments at this time? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, this is, you want me to do that before we go to, keep it open before, until we go, okay. I will reopen the public hearing and keep it open until we return from closed session, as this is set for closed session.
All right.
That's fine.
Okay, the board is now back in session. The public hearing is still open. If there's any additional public comment, we can take that at this time.
I just have a
You have
question
a
of
question? Go for it.
Mr. Tracy, and that, Mr.
Please come forward,
Yeah.
Mr. Tracy, if you don't mind.
A long walk for a short answer. Prior to you building and adding these additions to your property, were you aware of the county, process as far as getting permits and all that?
No, I didn't know you had to have a permit to put C trains. I didn't know if you put your equipment. I mean, we own the property, and it's
How
been
long have you been there?
We've been there since 4 years, 4.5 years.
Okay.
So it's all a learning. But I did come to compliance with everything that we did wrong, and
And
I
I
paid for all the fees and everything.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know from you. Thank you.
Any additional questions, public comment? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment period, public hearing, and bring it back to the board for further questions and action. We do have a question for staff, Mike. Go ahead.
Mike, had Mr. Tracy known about the process and come to the county for the permits and conditional use permit and whatnot, would this use have been allowed?
Yes, with a use permit. When a project or a use on land is not in compliance with the zoning ordinance, we will start the enforcement process. One step of that is to try to find a way to get into compliance. If the use is allowed in that zoning with obtaining a use permit, then we go forward and we have the applicant go and do that process and go through the whole procedure for that. If the use is not allowed, even with a use permit, then we just go through the enforcement procedures to have that that use eliminated. So therefore, this contractor storage yard is allowed in ag zoning, provided they obtain a use permit.
Okay, and he's in compliance now. Mr. Mata, when I had asked what his remedy would be, he said for him to be in compliance. But you're saying he now is in compliance with all the county regulations?
He is in compliance with the county regulations. All the building permits have been finalized. The use permit was approved. If the appeal is denied, then he has a valid use permit. There's conditions of approval regarding fencing and screening. That some of the landscape might not be built in. If you notice that one picture of the south side of the north fence, the eucalyptus trees had been trimmed quite a bit. Those will grow out, other vegetation will grow up. So the screening will be in a process of being developed, but it's being planted, fences are being put in. So it's in the process of that. That will take some time for the landscape to fully grow.
Okay, those are all my questions.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments from board members?
Just a comment. I went through this packet and I heard the testimony today, and I'm very disappointed that, and I understand that it's more common than I would like, but I'm very disappointed that we have individuals that should have an understanding of the process and that are building first. And so I hope that there's some learning lessons moving forward, that there are local procedures, whether it's in the county or whether it's in one of our 8 cities in Tulare County or someplace else. I think that's kind of standard practice, that you would do that due diligence before making a large investment. And I'm definitely in favor of having business in the county and making sure that we're spurring on and helping people have good jobs and doing those things. But I really hope that the applicant has learned, and if he has other friends in the contracting business, to make sure that they also understand that there are rules, and I think our staff does an excellent job at making sure that we're as business friendly as possible, to make sure that they're not overly onerous, but that we do have to comply with some type of rule making. So with that, I don't have any other comments.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, just to comment, I think there seems to be still, in listening to Mr. Amata speak, some confusion about CC&Rs that are contractually with the property. They're normally, and I'm assuming the case here, they're part of the deed restrictions. When someone buys property, they have certain restrictions that are built into the property. The county does not enforce those. So in the event that there's still a remedy available to Mr. Mott or anybody else through the CC&Rs, those remedies are still there. We don't overcome those. We don't enforce those. So we're talking about applying county rules to county property, and that's what we're doing here today. And that's what has been met as presented to us today. I understand Mr. Motta's feelings about this matter. I live in the country on 4 acres, and I know what it's like to live on small parcels. But I have 4 acres. I got 3.5 too much because it's an awful lot of weeds to take care of. Maybe I need to get goats like Mr. Motta has. But my point really in saying that is that private property rights are really inherent to our government. It's not about voting. You know, he was talking, and I don't. Again, this might have been some of the confusion about the CC&Rs. I'm not sure, but it's not a matter of, you know, we got 5 people in favor and 2 in opposed, so he wins by an election. Private property rights are private. That belongs to the individual who owns the land. And when you think about a nuisance, nobody has the right to create a nuisance. But nobody has, as a property owner, I don't have the right to say, hey, I like that view, that direction. You can't build a building over there. You're obstructing my view. That goes beyond my private property rights. When I'm extending it over to somebody else's private property rights, that's not a nuisance. Now, if the building is right next to me and it's casting a shadow on the solar system I just put on my property like that could be a nuisance. It's hard to find how this could be a nuisance to Mr. Motta in light of the fact that he's on 5 acres, and now there's another 5-acre parcel, and now there's this 5-acre parcel, how that could possibly be a nuisance to him from a legal standpoint. It doesn't mean from his perspective it's not a nuisance. It just extends beyond the power of the law. The law does not give that kind of right to Mr. Motta to somebody else's property. So in that respect, I hereby would make a motion to deny the appeal and set the matter for a 2-week, is that the time we need to have it come back with the proper findings prepared so that we can complete this matter?
2 weeks would be fine.
And just before we actually vote on this, I definitely think that there's still an opportunity for Mr. Motta to be involved in the process and to meet with Mr. Tracy and RMA staff and make sure that, I don't think that this is a neighbor versus neighbor dispute. I think everybody wants to be a good neighbor to each other. I think it's inherent in our society. So I would encourage you to sit down and talk to one another and communicate and see what can be done further maybe to continue the effort of being that good neighbor. So I would just encourage that.
If I may, certainly the condition of approval is going to require monthly inspections. We, at the Planning Commission, offered to, set up a meeting to talk to the parties based on that. As this moves forward on a monthly inspection, if there's issues, if the lighting, there's conditions of approval requiring downward lighting. If lighting becomes an issue, that's something that can be brought up, and we can adjust that as we go forward.
Okay.
So those certainly are open options.
All right, I have a motion from Supervisor Worthley, a second from Supervisor Struckling. Please vote. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We will now move on to item number 4, our second 9:30 timed item that we will take up at 10:55. It's a request from the Health and Human Services Agency for the application of Air Methods Corporation to provide air ambulance services in Tulare County. Rob.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Spada and Ms. Peterson. I'm Rob Stewart with the Health and Human Services Agency, providing interim direction to the Fiscal Operations Branch. It's a long title, but a relatively simple matter today. It's a public hearing for an air ambulance application. I'll begin by providing some context and background on this item. In March of 2012, the Board of Supervisors approved an agreement and an application for license to a company called Rome, doing business as SkyLife, to provide air ambulance services within Tulare County. Prior to 2012, SkyLife was operating as needed within Tulare County. However, they were based in Fresno and Kings County. And so in 2012, they established a base of operations within Tulare County with the board's approval and have been providing services to Tulare County residents since that time. The current agreement, which was entered in 2012, is set to terminate on June 30th of this year at the end of the current fiscal year. And here's some data on their annual service volume. The number of arrivals on scene over the last 2 calendar years. In 2016, they arrived on the scene of 255 scenes, and in 2015, 337. The number of transports they provided in 2016 was 250, and in 2015, 316 transports were provided. We were notified in February of this year by the Central California Emergency Medical Services Agency, which is our contracted local EMS agency, that SkyLife, or Rome, had begun the sale of their business to a company called Air Methods Corporation. And that's the reason for this item today, is due to the sale transaction which is taking place that prompts us to issue a license to the new provider and approve their application and an agreement with them to continue operating within Tulare County. In this transaction, the sale between Air Methods and SkyLife, the name SkyLife and all of its helicopters, real property, and equipment will become the property of Air Methods Corporation, and the services will continue to operate under the name of SkyLife. For the purposes of this presentation, I will refer to Air Methods as Air Methods to provide that distinction. We were informed that the sale transaction anticipated closing date was April 1st of this year, and so over the last few weeks we've worked diligently to ensure that all ordinance requirements for this matter have been met and are coming with our request to the board today. Because of the sale, it requires a new agreement with Air Methods Corporation as a new entity operating, but again, keeping the same property, equipment, personnel, and so forth as Rome, and continuing to do business under the name of SkyLife in order for us to maintain air ambulance services within Tulare County. We have confidence in Air Methods Corporation. It's a nationwide service based in Englewood, Colorado. They have provide services throughout the country in 48 states and more than 300 bases of operations, with nearly 20 operations in California. We followed the procedures and requirements outlined in Tulare County Ordinance, Part 6, Business Regulations and License, Chapter 7, Ambulance and Emergency Medical Services. Some of the requirements include an application on the part of the Air Ambulance Service Company in order to provide ambulance service within the county, and the issuance of a license which the board has the authority to issue or deny. It also requires published notice and a public hearing. We sent notice to Air Methods Corporation with a 10-day notice to meet that requirement of the ordinance. We mailed that to them on March 24th. And we also published a public notice in the 3 major newspapers in the area, the Visalia Times-Delta, the Porterville Recorder, and the Tulare Advance Register, with a 7-day notice that was published on March 28th. We also requested that an environmental review take place, and pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, this activity or project was reviewed by the Chief Environmental Planner and the Environmental Assessment Office. The activity or project is defined as the transition of ownership and operation of the current air ambulance provider, Rome, to Air Methods Corporation. There are no changes, just to reiterate, in personnel, helicopters, real property, equipment, dispatch, or any other functions. And therefore, it was determined by the Environmental Assessment Officer and the Chief Environmental Planner that this activity or project is exempt from CEQA, and a notice of categorical exemption has been prepared and attached to this item. Before getting into the request, I want to acknowledge the support and assistance on this matter of the Board of Supervisors, the County Administrative Office, County Council, the Resource Management Agency, and the Central California Emergency Medical Services Agency, as well as Health and Human Services Agency staff. With that, I respectfully request that the Board of Supervisors conduct a public hearing for the application of Air Methods Corporation to provide air ambulance services in Tulare County, approve a categorical exemption pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and the state CEQA guidelines, on the ground that it can be seen with certainty that there is no possibility that the activity, transition of an air ambulance provider, may have a significant effect on the environment. Authorize the Environmental Assessment Officer or designee to sign and file the notice of exemption with the county clerk, accept a recommendation by the Tulare County Health and Human Services Agency Director, acting as Health Director, to issue an ambulance service provider license for air ambulance services from Air Methods Corporation. Approve the termination of agreement with Rome, doing business as Skylife, effective March 31st, 2017, due to sale of business to Air Methods Corporation. Approve an agreement with Air Methods Corporation for the provision of emergency air ambulance services within the boundaries of Tulare County, retroactive from April 1st, 2017 through March 31st of 2019. Find that the board had authority to enter into the proposed agreement as of April 1st, 2017, and that it was in the county's best interest to enter into the agreement on that date, and authorize the chairman of the board to sign 3 copies of the agreement. And I'm happy to answer any questions now or during the proceedings.
Okay. Any questions from board members?
My only
Supervisor
question is,
Stuckey?
will they continue to be stationed at the Visalia Airport?
I believe so. I believe there will be no changes in where they're stationed. They're keeping the same personnel, equipment, and so forth, so there will be no disruption. They'll continue to provide for the public health and welfare of our residents.
That's a county question because it's a District 3, but also they're closer to, they're in the county rather than, I know a helicopter's fast, but it's nice to
I
have
think
them
Supervisor
in the
Stuckey is
community.
looking for a helicopter ride more than anything.
No,
Is there
she's
anybody
not.
else
No.
have any questions? Okay,
I
seeing
don't.
none, at this time I will open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak on this matter may please come forward at this time. Your public comments can and will be limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name and address.
Good morning, maybe almost afternoon. My name is Jim Weaver. I'm the Vice President for the Air Methods Corporation. I live at 71280 Sandia Street in Mesa, Arizona. I have the opportunity to be the Vice President for the Western states, to include California. As Rob shared with you, we may have operations from Alaska to Key West, but what really counts is what we do in the individuals' communities that we serve. And in the state of California, we have 26-plus aircraft, employ over 350 nurses, paramedics, pilots, and mechanics. And to answer your question, everything remains just as it is. we have the good fortune, all the nurses, paramedics, the pilots, and even Lisa Epps, who's been part of the American Ambulance and Skylife program for over 21 years now. So, and she'll continue to be the manager. And I'm certainly, I also want to thank Jason and Rob and Dan in this process. They've been very helpful and pointing us in the right direction, and we certainly look forward to the opportunity to serve you in the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional public comments at this time? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment period and bring it to the board for action.
Move for approval.
I have a motion from Supervisor Ennis, a second from Supervisor Shuckling. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations.
I thought you might need it.
All right, next we're going to move on to untimed item number 24, which is a request from the Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector's Office to approve an agreement with Golden State Finance Authority to collect and distribute special assessments on the secured property tax roll in regards to the California House Finance Community Services or Community Facilities District 2014-1 Clean Energy. Okay, go ahead, Rita.
Could you repeat that?
That's a long item.
Good morning, Chairman Vanderpool, board members, CAO, council. This is our standard agreement with entities to put items on the tax roll for collection. It's mainly to be able to collect the county's fee for service at the board's directions. The council wrote this agreement to where it was generic so that if other entities besides Dinuba and Porterville made agreement with this company for this type of assessment to go on the tax roll, that we wouldn't have to come back to you. So it's just generic, it's standard, and we have like 35 of these agreements already approved by the board. So our request is that you approve the agreement between this finance authority and the county Tulare to collect the assessments on the secured property tax roll and to charge our fee, and of course for the chairman to sign.
Okay, great. Anyone have any questions? Any public comment related to this item? D1. Both microphones work. You can use either.
Good morning, or almost afternoon. Joel Rosales with Tulare County Association of Realtors. I would just actually like to read a quick statement from the association, if you'd mind. Our board association understands the Tulare County Board of Supervisors is in a difficult position that requires them to collect on assets for PACE financing for the municipalities within Tulare County that have approved PACE financing. Even though the County of Tulare has not approved of PACE financing, the agreement before you today allows the county to recover the administrative costs to administer the collection of these PACE assessments. We understand the county's need to do so in order to maintain its fiscal responsibility. In some cases, public policy can be well intended, yet the implementation of the policy does not ultimately reflect the original intent and can have damaging unintended consequences. Unfortunately, this is the case with property assessed clean energy. The Tulare County Association of Realtors wants to reiterate our position on PACE. The bottom line is this. This type of financing should not be allowed on the property tax roll. Government should not be in the business of collecting payment for private enterprise. Assessments should only be placed on the property tax roll for the overall good of the public, such as fire, trash, and safety assessments. This is not a public good or for the overall welfare of our county. This is a bad policy, and something must be done before more hardworking taxpayers are hurt. We do understand what this is about as far as collection is in process. We just wish you would have you guys be cautioned on the fact that I hope this doesn't open up the door for you guys to make changes as far as PACE is concerned. Since we aren't collecting in the beginning, would we be collecting in the future? So thank you, and that's all the time I have. Thank you.
Any additional public comments? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment period, bring it back to the board for action.
Move approval.
All right. We have a motion by Supervisor Shuckley and a second by Supervisor Ennis. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now take up item number 25, which is a request to receive a presentation from the Central California Emergency Medical Services Agency regarding the EMS system in Tulare County.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Dan Lynch. I'm your EMS director for the Central California EMS Agency. In 2009, this board did a great thing for Tulare County in approving an EMS or an ambulance response system that serves the entire county with paramedics and does a great job. In fact, last year, the ambulances responded to 51,800 calls in the county of Tulare, transporting 40,000 people to our local hospitals. So it's a busy system. One of the great things about what was done in 2009 was that the county basically approved all of the existing ambulance providers in the county, and those ambulance providers got together to work together and created an ambulance association to show how they were going to work together, and it's been a really, really good deal. And I know that I've been in front of this board before to tell you that it's really working well. But one of the better benefits of it is that we have a contract with each of the 6 ambulance providers in the same contract. So when we change one, we change all so that we stay standard against all the contracts. So what I'm here to talk to you about today is an amendment to the 6 contracts for the ambulance providers. So there's 3 items or issues that are being addressed in this amendment. The first is a contract extension, the second is some zone cleanup, and the third is a rate adjustment. The contract extension is necessary. The contract will be coming up in about a year and a half, and probably closer to 2 years. And this past year, if you remember, when mobile life support departed the system, it left a pretty good gap in the system. A lot of the ambulance providers came forward buying additional assets to make up for that gap. And so what they've asked for is an additional 5-year extension of the agreement, and to basically solidify some of the financial burden that they have so that they could get some long-term type of financing. And banks tend to like to have contracts that are in place so that they can feel more secure about their processes. And so we're looking at recommending to the board as part of the amendment to extend the agreement. And part of this is I want to make sure that because we're utilizing all of the ambulance providers in the county and anybody that comes, we're not limiting anything. We're not putting exclusive operating agreements out there or new ones. So there's no RFP process or anything like that goes through, because we're basically utilizing everybody that's providing those services. The second piece is the zone cleanup. When this thing went in 8 years ago, things change. Providers have left, and so this is just the time for us to clean up some zones. Some of the zones we make ambulance providers responsible for some zones so we can hold them to performance standards, and so that's one of the things we've done here, just to modify some of the who's responsible for which zone, so everybody's performance standards are the same, and the people of Tulare County are getting good service regardless of where you live. And then the last item in the amendment is an adjustment to the ambulance user rate. A lot of things have changed in this last 6 months and 12 months regarding reimbursement of ambulance services. A lot of it due to Covered California and some of the Medicare guidelines, things like that. And it's pretty significant on all ambulances, especially in California, and it's no different for the ambulance providers here in Tulare. So I'd like to ask Paul Main to come up from American Ambulance of Visalia, who actually is a spokesperson for this ambulance association in Tulare County, to kind of talk about some of the challenges of that and a little justification for you.
Hi, good morning still. Paul Mann with American Ambulance Visalia, also chair of the Ambulance Provider Association. Just wanted to, I was the lucky one that got asked to come up here before you, because this is such an easy subject to deal with. But regarding a rate increase, we haven't had a rate increase since 2009. There's been many adjustments throughout California with respect to the rates increasing, and we've been steady with our 2009 rates. With the changes that are impacting us in Tulare County, mainly with respect to the capitalization of equipment to get our system moving to where it's at today. We need to take care of all the expenses that go with that. We're also dealing with a national paramedic shortage throughout the country. With that, our goal is to retain the paramedics that are here within Tulare County. We've seen a number of folks that, after tax rolls started increasing over the last few years, many of the public safety agencies went on a recruiting targeting many of the Tulare County, Central Valley paramedics that have field experience in managing their own calls. Many of these folks looking for those opportunities, like the idea of moving to either Northern or Southern California because of the different rates, that we can offer here within the Central Valley generally. So in order to compete and try to retain the paramedics here within the county, our goal is to try to get our rates up and then also supplement and give back to our employees where we can to try to compete and keep those folks here. Our goal is to have local paramedic programs, start early and in the process of trying to educate them to the different career opportunities within our organizations here within Tulare County, and try to keep those folks steady and within our area and not lose them elsewhere. We do understand, and we know that folks are looking for stepping stones to other careers down the road, but the longer that we can keep them here within Tulare County, it helps our system grow, it helps us maintain consistency in our patient care and growing our own companies to help others here within the community. A number of health care reimbursement issues have occurred. Many of those ACA-related things that I'm sure you guys are very well aware of that impact us on an ongoing basis. Basically, over the last few years, when we have to go sit and when we're trying to capitalize equipment, when we go meet with our bankers and financiers, and we explain to them, basically our business model is set up on collecting basically about 30 cents on the dollar. They kind of look at you a little funny, but that's how the business model is set up for our particular our services that we provide. Going forward, and as the ACA has impacted us, we've seen those reimbursements drop from roughly 30 cents on the dollar to about 28 cents on the dollar. So we have to adjust for that gap, and we understand that where we are. We've also built in to the rate increase requests that we do a 3% or CPI cost index so that we stay up with the rates instead of having the big gap in between like we're doing now. So that, in a sense, is where we're at right now with the rates.
Yeah, when I first saw that seemed a little bit strange, like it would be consumer price index or 3%, whichever is greater. I would have thought lesser. But given the fact, I can't imagine anybody's gone 9 years without a rate increase. I mean, we do that all the time at the county for our rates, for providing services. Utilities keep going up. So I can certainly see the need to do this, to try to build a little bit of a capacity for you there. And so I'm supportive of that. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? I'm glad that you provided that context, Supervisor Worthley, in your comments, because if you look at this, simply reacting to the Affordable Care Act, given the situation in Washington at this point in time, we're not sure what the health landscape is going to be looking like in the near future. So, reacting specifically just for that reason, it might be a little premature. However, because there has not been any sort of adjustment over the last 9 years, and the environment around us has changed, and it is important to recruit and retain good employees and be able to compensate them well and actually have rates that reflect your costs. I'm definitely supportive of this too. So with that, the chair will entertain a motion if there are no public comments.
Move approval, Mr.
I'll second
Seeing none, I have a motion from Supervisor Worthley, a second by Supervisor Ennis. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, next we're going to move on to item number 26, which is a long-awaited presentation, and poor Roger waited a long time to get this presentation. Good morning. 2.5 hour wait for Mr. Dixon.
That's his third bottle of water he's going to drink.
This is a request to receive a presentation from Child Support Services regarding the accomplishments as well as the department's financial sustainability.
I can wow you with
The
this.
circus has arrived.
Oh. Help.
While you're getting your presentation up, I think it's actually probably a good thing we're not seeing you too much, because if we were, that would mean that there would be issues in the department, Roger. So you've been doing quite well, it seems.
They got an award.
Yeah, they're an award-winning department.
Here we go. Well, good morning. My name is Roger Dixon. I'm the director of the Child Support Services. So I'm here this morning to give you updates. I haven't been before the board. Our first opportunity to wow you and give you some good information about what we're doing and what we're attempting to do to move forward. Let's get started. So here's a quick overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about state mandates, what we're required to do, give you a program overview, just a high level of what we're doing and what we're trying to do, give you a fiscal picture, just let you know where our physical structure is, and I'm going to talk a little bit about department changes since my arrival, some of the things that we've done that have produced some positive changes, some positive results. Because I'm going to touch on performance and results and organizational development and talk about what's in it for the future. So the child support program, just high level, is mandated under the Title 40 Act, the Social Security Administration. Our goals, performance goals, and what we're ordered to do, what we're supposed to do, what we're mandated to do, is establish child support orders for those children born out of wedlock, and we collect on those orders. We collect on arrears. There's another performance measure there, that's cost effectiveness, which is measured statewide. It's how we do in terms of total dollars expended to run the program versus how many dollars that we bring in. So that's a statewide program. We also break it down individually to our county as well, and we're doing about $3.50 in terms of cost effectiveness. As another bullet up here that I didn't put up there is that we're also required to establish paternity for children born out of lawful wedlock. So we try to find out who's dad. Again, the primary purpose of our program is to collect and distribute child support. I mean, just its basic needs. Here's some of the, just an overview of the state mandates. Give you just comparison of the national average and Tulare County. Support orders, and just kind of give you a context of how that is. The support order is how many cases in our caseload that has an order to pay child support. On a national average, and throughout the country, it's 89% of cases in their respective caseloads have child support orders. We're, on the other hand, we have 96% of our cases have child support orders. The other 4% could be in any type of fluctuation, in litigation, trying to locate non-custodial parents, and it varies. But that's a really good number to have. The second column there, current support collections, we're collecting at 74%. This measurement looks at total dollars current support that's owed by total dollars that collected. And 74% for a Central Valley caseload is outstanding. As you can see, we're beating the national average, and I'm very pleased with staff's efforts with this, and we continue to do better. And the last column that you see on the far right is collection on arrears. What this measurement looks at is total cases in our caseload that has an arrears owed and a payment made towards that particular case during the federal fiscal year. So if I get one payment towards that, I get a tick mark. It's kind of a wishy-washy performance measure, in my opinion. And the national level, they're looking at some of the measures, but nevertheless, it's a performance measure. We're not quite there. We're right in the ballpark, and we're going to take that over here in the next couple of years. I'm feeling. So just to kind of give you a comparison of where we stack up with our brethren in the Central Valley, which is pretty good. And Tulsa's there highlighted in the green. I just spoke to the support orders, current support, and arrears. But the final column on the far right, overall ranking, is what the state does. They rank based upon those performance metrics and how do you fall out overall. And as you can see, that Tulare County is ranked 17 out of the 52 counties and so in the state, which is really good. That's up. I have a little slide later on. We're at 22 the previous year, but last year we ended at 17, so we made some improvements in our position. So, go Tulare. Again, looking at the collections distribution, we're averaging about 37 million, not thousand, $1 million in collections, again, which is really good. We had a pretty big increase from 2015 to 2016, a 3.02%. I'll talk more too about what I feel contributes to those collections and some of the things that they attribute to that. Again, I have to go back to good staff and good planning, good strategic initiatives that we have. Here's some of the program overviews. What we try to do is provide quality customer service to all of our customers. We're looking at, we work with both custodial parents that come into our office that want child support services and non-custodial parents. I like to say that we try to do business with a handshake, but if we need the hammer, we got it. Got it behind us. So we keep that in our pocket. But we're really trying to take a holistic family approach and providing services to all. One of the things that we talked, I had mentioned that some of the reasons I think we were successful in our collection efforts is early intervention and call reminders. Again, when someone comes into our office and we establish a child support order, we really try to educate them on the purposes and the why you should pay your child support, and often. And we do reminders. We call and say, hey, listen, you got your child support order, you got payment due, what types of things are prohibiting you from being successful? And we try to help with some of those impediments that come to those non-custodial parents. So early intervention is a real big thing for us in terms of really getting to know our customers. We provide customers with resources, employment and educational resources. Again, some come and say, I don't have a job, I'm not this, I'm not that. Well, we'll try to hook you up. We've established good working relationships with community partners and try to work with our Workforce Investment Board to refer folks over that aren't working to become gainfully employed. Again, that's the handshake part that we would try to use to help, someone to become gainfully so they can pay their child support. Of course, we offer toll-free services on 24/7, and lastly, we conduct customer service surveys regularly. We really try to get the pulse of what our customers are saying. And so far, so good, listening or reviewing some of those things. The number on the toll-free number, you walk through the automated system, it doesn't work well. But we haven't seen a lot of things that we currently, as a staff or as a department, are doing that will cause me any concern. Just some of the automation, some of the things that people get frustrated with. So, just give a quick fiscal picture, funding breakdown. Real good thing that the county doesn't fund anything, but for us, 96% of our funding comes from federal and state money. Again, as you can see, 3.6 is the EDP. The county does give us a little fund that we're not allowed by state and federal rules to acknowledge staff and buy gifts or have a little potluck. And we have a county fund for tuition, which I think is awesome too. So we have that as what you guys provide for us, and really appreciate that. We also have a special category. We have John Higgins. He's our
Bulldog Higgins.
Bulldog. Okay, well, he's our extra help. The state utilizes his expertise. He's been in the business for years, and they really rely upon him for when they get into a jam or special circumstances with any type of legal angles. and he's a great guy, great guy. I thought he was a unicorn. They talked about this guy before I came aboard, and he never existed. And I walked in the office one day, and there he was. I was like, wow, you do exist. So our fiscal picture of the budget, we've been budgeting for trending the last year, like $16 million plus. The state has a formula based on allocation and caseload size. That's an ongoing issue. And I think I've talked to you maybe individually that I really wanted to be part of the state's conversations when they look at allocation. A lot of times the Central Valley and the smaller counties get lost. Me being a new person, I thought it was great. One, I can learn, and two, I can say, well, I don't understand, I don't agree with that, and be in future allocation of budgets. But we've been budgeting about $60 million. We've been pretty steady with that in the last, as you see, 5 years or so. We don't necessarily generate revenue, but we collect. So the budget amount that we have, and we expend about $12 million of that budget, and we always leave, because we're very conservative in our spending, about 22% on the table. And that's because historically, before I arrived, we had the downturn, and there's some other things that are going. Not that we don't want to spend it, but we keep that reserve there because we just don't know. So we've been pretty fiscally sound with that. Some of the departments.
Roger, question, Mr. Chairman. Sure. So I'm curious, since these are federal and state dollars, and you have a budgeted amount, and I'm assuming you get funded for the budgeted amount?
Yes.
And then that you don't expend, does that go then to a reserve account?
Goes back.
Or it goes back to the federal and state government?
Yeah.
Okay. I know it wouldn't come to us because it's not our money, but I didn't know whether you were able to hold it into some kind of reserve or whether you had to pay it back to them.
So some of the things that we've done the last couple of years, the department changes, we created expectations for all levels of team members, and we incorporated their performance evaluation. That was critically important that we set the tone. If we want to change the culture, we got to set the expectations of what that culture looks like. Some of the things that we put in there, as you can see, we know your individual and team and department state goals. I mean, that sounds like it's a novelty or it's expectation, but you really have to make sure they understand it and have those conversations. And we expect you to meet and exceed those goals. That's, given that we give you the tools, the training, and those things that you need to accomplish that. We put that in there. And we want you to be professional and provide excellent customer service. It sounds, very remedial, but you have to say those things, demand those things, and make it happen. What we've done, and I think I mentioned this previously, is that we continue outreach with our internal and community partners, which is critically if we're going to really serve the whole family, whole customer. We've held employer workshops that we invited some local employers, Lowe's, Eagle Mountain Casinos, Home Depot, and some others to come in and we talk to them. When you get paperwork from our department, what does it look like? What does this mean? Answer those types of questions. In addition, we've invited them back, and they've held workshops where we invited our customers in that say that they need jobs, and they get to apply for jobs in our office with these vendors there. So we're kind of reaching out and doing some of that. We haven't perfected that. We're still work in progress, but it's a great start. I think that we've done that. We've also really teamed up with our Workforce Investment Board. Really have a good working relationship because we also serve the same customers, it seems like. So we wanted to make sure that, are we missing something? If there's a grant or something that comes out, can we partner up with that? Just those types of things. Probation, HHS, and of course we partner with IT. Any technological advances that we can have to make our work efficient and easy, we definitely wanted to do that. A couple other things that we did, team members were asked to participate in developing performance management plans. We felt it was important to get staff engaged so they do know what their goals are, and they know how we're going, and that's worked out really well. Some of the team members have really risen to the top of this, and we really have really great plans. and I'm very, very pleased with that. And the last thing that as the new director and assistant director, Ms. Denise Cardozo, have done is that we held roundtable discussions with all staff. So what we did is we just came and just talked. And the uniqueness is that I invited members from different areas of the department. So I didn't have all one team. I had different areas to come in so they can hear and interchange with each other and hear their concerns about what's going on in their particular area. And that has come out really good. We have a lot of action items that come out of that. When you be careful what you ask for, you get it. So you come out with a lot of action, which is really good. And it allows us to be visible, more, in tune with what's really going on. And we conducted those. It takes a while because we conducted those twice a year the first year, and we did it again this year. We just completed that this year. Again, as a new director coming in, I have my own ideas, my own thoughts, and those types of things. I thought it was really important for our leadership team, myself, assistant director, chief attorney, our managers, to be on the same page on how we lead. What does that look like? What does that mean? And so we brought in a vendor to help us to establish that. And we started with myself and the managers first because we set the strategic direction and the policy. And with the focus on communication, vision, values, all of those things that you see in those bullets. And then we started with us sort of setting the tone, living, breathing, the training and how we want to lead, being the examples. We brought our supervisory staff in, and then we identified emerging leaders, which is important to continue this, and brought them in with that as well. So we're all versed, we're all are reading the same sheet of music, so to speak, and we continue to try to evolve that. What does that look like moving forward? A couple other things is visible management. I got to be out there talking, walking with the staff here in Visalia and in Porterville. I think I can never not do enough of that, really, to get to know. Staff of 200 people. It's pretty challenging. I got to keep asking, okay, what's this person's name again? After 2 years, I think I'm getting it, and it's kind of happening. But it really gives staff that I'm approachable, and that we can talk and reason with and resolve issues, and I'm very approachable. Performance and results. From federal fiscal year 15-16, child support collections was up 1.6%. We met all those federal performance expectations that were set out. And then, as I mentioned, our state ranking has improved, or we've moved up from 22 to 17, given that of our performance. Some of the things that's going on in the development of our staff, we definitely try to get team members engaged at all levels. I think if you're engaged, you have a vested interest, and you give them some responsibility other than your job duties. It bodes well. It's done well. So again, they participate in our performance management plan. Everyone has a stake. Even if those that led some of the action items, they would go back to their respective teams and get input, and I think that's worked well. We really worked on culture improvement. We revised our mission, vision statement, and values, which was supervisor-driven. And it's funny how that worked out, because I had started that, doing it for the department, and I wrote it out, and the supervisors came up with some of the same things, like, we were already working together, so it worked out pretty good. and as you can see, we wanted to have a culture of trust. You got to trust, and I tell the story to everybody that listens, which is hardly anyone, that when I first arrived, one of the things that the staff wanted to do was change the plan that they already had in place. I'm like, oh my gosh, no, we can't change anything. I just got here, so no, we can't do it. But I had to trust, and I said, okay, go forth with some conditions, and we met our objective. So trust was really important. I've shown it, and I hope that they see that in me and to our staff, to our exec team. They can trust us to be open and with them and trust them in the work they do. Open and effective communication, that's ongoing. We really stress that. I think it's important if you really engage with staff, we continue to have open communication. Supportive, encouraging, definitely do that in terms of encourage initiatives, even to individuals that are pursuing other careers. We highly encourage that if that's what you want to do, we encourage you to go out and learn what you can in the other world and bring it back to us, and we'll hire you back. So we want you to do that. Transparency, we really try to be open and keep everybody informed of the things that we can, of what's happening in the department, where we're going, and common goals and values. Those speak for themselves. The future for us is to continue outreach with our community partners. We definitely want to do that. It seems like we can't do this business by ourselves. It's going to take the community to do that. And continue to identify leaders and develop succession planning and training. We have a staff that, we're slowly retiring, and they're like, oh, so we got to figure out who's going to be here, and then we got to train them up and make sure that we're ready and we don't, have a little impact, as minimal impact as possible. Again, we want to continue to evolve our services, be more holistic at providing services as we can. Again, our job is our main mission, bottom line, is to collect child support. But if we can do other things to help them in that venture, a lot of times some of our clients come in with other issues other than child support, and we need to get that straightened out first before you can start paying on child support. So we try to be more holistic in that. And lastly, continue to meet and exceed all performance metrics, including our budget and all those things that come to light at every day. So, and that's it. Any questions?
Any questions from board members?
No, I haven't got any questions, but Roger, your enthusiasm is unbelievable, and it spills over into your job place. So great job, great presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to just make a comment too and just say that I really appreciate seeing such improvements in the department since you've been there. I think it's evidence, like Supervisor Ennis said, that your enthusiasm and your spirit that you bring to the workplace, it carries over to your employees and coworkers, and you see in the numbers that things are getting better. And I have to tell you, on the flip side, you also see from the customer service satisfaction levels that you're doing good stuff because you're dealing with a very difficult customer base. Not many people are going to be happy when you're trying to deliver them service, and that service delivery is taking money out of their pocketbook for a child or someone that they may be far removed from. So really great job on all ends, and great job in terms of improving the rankings. It's very impressive that we are amongst the top in the Central Valley and moving towards the top in the state. I think that's just fantastic, and you should be very proud, Roger.
Thank you.
Great job to you and all of your employees. And I think Supervisor Worthley wanted
I love all the statistics, but I will say to me the most important thing is the change of culture that you brought. You came into a very difficult situation, a very caustic kind of a working environment. Some of the newer board members were not aware of what was going on there. We weren't aware of what was going on there. What was brought to our attention, it would kind of remind us of, well, I won't say what it reminded us of, but it was not good. So bringing someone from the outside in, we felt was very important. And Roger, you have more than fulfilled our expectations, and it's really great to see. I mean, we really want people who work for Tulare County to not get up on Monday morning and go, oh no, I've got to go back to that place again.
Yeah.
I want them to go to work because they want to go to work, and they like their colleagues, they like their supervisors, they like what they're doing. I mean, this is a fulfilling job in the sense that we are doing a very special need of providing for the financial needs of youngsters and their supporting spouses. And I just want to thank you for a job well done and continuing to be done, because it's a holistic thing, right? It's really helpful to the families who receive these funds, but at the same time, on the backside, we want to have a good working environment for our employees, and you've done a yeoman's job, I think, of changing the attitude in that department. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Holistic Amy, do you have
Yeah,
comments?
Holistic Amy. Yeah, just to say, Roger was one of the first folks I met with at the county, and I left there. Your energy, I was energized, and just even sharing your family stuff with me, and you mentioned it, and I like, how you talk about what are the issues, why aren't you paying? Well, if you don't have a job, let's find you a job, and just working the whole system there. So thank you for your energy, and obviously a lot of improvements in the department.
I saw Roger, at that great melting pot of civilization at Costco, and he and his wife seemed to be having an enjoyable time there. So she seemed to enjoy herself here in Tulare County, and that's very, very important.
Got acclimated. It's a good place.
Would the child of the board like to make any comments?
I would, Ag. Thank you. Thank you. I prefer to be called Baby Croc for the record. But I just want to, yeah, Danny. Joe Pesci, I prefer, actually. I want to thank you, Roger, and thank you again for taking me out in the hinterland. I'm not exactly sure how you guys ended up in the industrial warehousing complex, but that's another story. But I just want to emphasize to the board and for the audience and anyone listening is that what Roger talked about in the presentation is as far as the change culture and taking interest in the employees' lives, whether it was someone in the mailroom or in accounting or in the call center. Roger knew personal aspects of the individuals' lives and really took an interest, and employees were coming up to us. We even somebody sang to us as well as and it was.
That was staged.
It was. Yeah. I don't think it was. If you would have seen Roger's reaction, I'm sure Supervisor Shucklian would love to play poker with you. He has a bad poker face. No. That's a general. Actually, that's close to the deuce. So I just want to just thank you again, and that everything that you said, I saw, I witnessed, and it was a great pleasure to be out there.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Let me just briefly thank Roger as a department head for your very good presentation and, most importantly, for the outstanding performance of your department. We have had many conversations over the past year or so, and I truly want to appreciate your commitment to strategic management and a team-based approach towards performance. It definitely shows. The results show. So I want to thank you and keep encouraging you to do so. And when you do visit, keep bringing me that business literature because truly it does make a difference and it is appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you. Great job, Roger. Appreciate the presentation. All right, we're now going to move on to item number 27, which is a request from the County Administrative Office to seek direction and to conduct an analysis for the establishment of the Office of the Director of Finance.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members, CAO, Mr. Spada, and council. Sophia Almanza, Deputy CAO. Today I have the pleasure of presenting the item to request to authorize an analysis to establish the Office of Director of Finance. As some background, during the State of the County address, the chair calls for preparation of the strategic financing plan to address current and future financial challenges to serve the board's best interest of Tulare County residents. Additionally, it was requested to establish an ad hoc committee to guide the preparation and presentation of the strategic financing plan to the Board of Supervisors this calendar year. The board approved the strategic financing plan ad hoc committee on February 28, 2017, and the first meeting will be conducted next Tuesday, April 11th, 9 a.m. at the CAO conference room. A framework for analysis. The first items are ideas for public policy considerations, the goals. What are we trying to accomplish? An example of what we were trying to accomplish is input of organizational performance in the financial arena. Authority. We will look at what we can do and what we cannot do, and this will also encompass a legal analysis. The procedures would entail the operating procedures of the office and oversight. We suggest that it would be appropriate if the board had oversight over the performance of the office. In keeping with the strategic business approach of the county, we will be looking at the organizational analysis of the proposed financial office, which includes the structure, the process, budget and finance, performance and personnel and other resources. As you may recall, this was done recently with the Register of Voters office. In addition, our office, as a note, has already started to conduct the research. We have examples from other counties and an outline of the process that will be brought before the ad hoc committee as well. A prudent fiscal review of the proposed ballot measure will be addressed, covering the revenues and expenditures involved. This chart here shows the procedural options. It identifies the actions required here on this column here. So today I'm here requesting to conduct the analysis, when you'll receive the report coming back to the board, the first reading of the ordinance, the second reading of the ordinance, and all the way follow through to the completion of filing the paperwork with the elections office to put the measure on the ballot. And the corresponding dates on here. Option A is 120 days from the paperwork to be submitted before elections, and option B is the required 88 days. I would also like to note, by directing this action, the board is not bound to place a reorganization matter on the 2017 ballot. So with that, the requested action is now before you. We request to authorize the County Administrative Office to conduct the analysis for the establishment of the Office of Director of Finance. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments from board members?
Well, I think it's just important to point out, Mr. Chairman, we're not determining an outcome today. We're talking about beginning a process to do the analysis to make a decision at a future date and time if we do in fact want to proceed along these lines. So I think it's important to make that clear to folks that the board is not stating today we are going to create this department or this director. We are evaluating that, and we will make that final determination in the future.
Any additional questions or comments from board members? Supervisor Crocker?
I assume we have to have a special election or we have to have an election, but do we have to have that prior to the primary of 2018?
It would make sense if we did it in this 2017 ballot year, only because it coincides with the term of the existing auditor-controller position. So how it was explained to me is the first beginning of the calendar year, if it is still an elected position at that time, then other people can run. The point would be moved after that.
Okay.
Is there an election in November 2017?
Any additional questions or comments? Okay, I do have a public request, a request to speak under public comment related to this item, and that request is from Rita Woodard. Rita, you can use either microphone.
Good morning, Chairman Vanderpool again, board members, CAO, and council. First of all, I would like to thank the board for their good work for the people of Tulare County. In my 29-year tenure, I feel we have worked well together. It is my understanding this item is to do a study, but then hold an election to replace the elected auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector with an appointed position. Elections of government officials is a vital feature of American democracy. This action would cause the citizens to lose their voice. Also, the checks and balances put in place by the legislature when this position was created would be lost. Appointed positions are interpreted to have undue influence from the appointing authority, thus lacking in independence and transparency. Instead of replacing the position, perhaps the board could consider reviewing the qualifications of the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector. Please let me know if I can assist in this analysis review process. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Now, Mr. Chairman, my understanding, maybe I'm misunderstanding it. I thought that a director of finance does not replace the auditor controller. I mean, the controller part of it, but the auditor still is an elected official. Is that correct?
Yes, there is some limitation on how far we can go with regard to the appointment power, and that's going to require some legal analysis, and that will be part of the implementation, if you will.
So there will still be an elected person. Where Rita wears several hats right now, one of these hats would be removed from her, or that position rather, if we went forward with this. But there still would be an elected auditor for the county, if I'm not mistaken.
That needs to be defined, if you will, and that's why we've looked at examples from other counties in terms of how they've done it.
And I would say, in response to Ms. Woodard's comments, that I do think that a part of the analysis should also include the establishment of, or what it would look like with a series of qualifications for the specific position as well. I think that is an important piece.
I think that's
as an option.
I think that's a good contribution to today's matter, and it will be factored into the analysis.
Okay, great. Any additional public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it to the board for action.
So do we have, is there a preference from staff as far as Plan A or Plan B as far as time frame?
Option A is the preference.
Okay.
Okay.
I move to approve proceeding with option A.
Or B, right? I mean, at this point, we're just.
Or
Yeah, A is the
Did
more
we want
aggressive
direction?
timeline. Option B, it's the 88, which is the required number of days you have to put the item on the ballot. So if, for whatever reason, I'm just kind of giving the county administrative office a little bit more space and going with option A.
Okay, so I amend that just to approve with conducting the analysis.
Okay, so we have a motion from Supervisor Crocker. Second from Supervisor Worthley. And, to add to that direction, we'll make this, please, as inclusive of a process as we possibly can.
Okay.
As we look at this.
Right, and as you said, with looking at qualifications for an elected and also what other counties have done.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. All right, next we're going to move on to the last item on our open calendar today, and that is item 28, a request to receive a report from the CAO's office regarding the review of the Conflict Public Defender Services Agreement administered by the Allen Law Firm, Inc. Actually, I was going to wait and stall this even longer because I just love seeing our DA just sit in the audience. I think that's awesome.
He's here?
That's really great. But anyways, okay, we'll go ahead. Mr. Spada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. Although we are at a late part of the hour, I will expedite this presentation, but I must emphasize this is a very important presentation with regard to the stakes associated with the conflict defender position. All right. Next page. All right, in terms of background, to provide a little context, on March 29th, 2016, your board approved a conflict defender agreement for a 3-year period of August 16, 2012-18 with the law firm of David Allen. Your board approved an $8.3 million contract for that 3-year period. On November 1st, 2016, your board approved an amendment to that contract to increase the compensation for attorneys largely for the Red Soul prosecution, which is a massive gang-related prosecution, the largest in the history of Tulare County. And your board approved an amendment to increase the compensation for attorneys, outside attorneys, to $700,000, thus increasing the contract price, the contract amount, to a little over $9 million. The matter before you today is to request another amendment to that agreement to increase the compensation for attorneys by $300,000 and to also increase ancillary services, which are the investigative, paralegal, forensic services associated with legal representation, $200,000, and we are proposing to shift that $200,000 from the following fiscal year to this fiscal year, which would result in no net county cost. However, an essential feature of today's presentation results from a request by the Board of Supervisors on March 29, 2016, that within 1 year of performance, that there would be a review of the Allen Law Firm in terms of how the conflict defender services were implemented. And there are two parts to this review: an improvement of legal services and improvement of fiscal administration. Turning to the improvement of legal services, there are a number of very positive steps that were taken by the Allen Law Firm. First and foremost, open lines of communication were clearly established between the conflict defender and the Tulare County Superior Court, the district attorney, probation, and the county administrative office. And I must compliment Mr. Allen because in good faith he met with myself and Ms. Almanza several times and provided very detailed information with respect to the performance, the implementation of the agreement, and I must thank him for that. In addition, the law firm, the conflict defender, had modified attorney assignments to improve efficiency. He created conflict defender teams in order to expedite and improve organizational performance. He conducts regular meetings with the presiding judge to try to help resolve issues. He also has regular meetings with the juvenile department to discuss caseload and how to improve the addressing of that caseload by addressing new laws. I should note for the record that there are 2 letters of support in your packet, both from the presiding judge and the district attorney, strongly endorsing the commitment and the continuance of the Allen Law Firm. Turning now to the second element of the performance review, an improvement of fiscal administration. Even though there have been increases with respect to this contract, largely stemming from the Red Soul case, based upon the reports that are provided to you and in the packet, by reassigning cases from outside attorneys to attorneys within the conflict defender panel, there has been a reduction. In other words, the cost could have been even higher had not these reassignment to conflict defender attorneys occurred. In addition, the conflict defender now requires prior approval from the outside attorneys for ancillary services. Previously, that was not required. In addition, the conflict defender has provided numerous informative caseload and financial reports in order for us to evaluate and measure the progress of the conflict defender. All right, now turning to the proposed amendment, it is specifically to increase the compensation of the agreement in the amount of $300,000, primarily, if not exclusively, for the Red Soul case. Secondly, to increase the cost for ancillary services by a shift from next year's fiscal year to the current fiscal year. The bottom line is that these increases will not cause a net increase in county cost. $300,000 will come from miscellaneous administration within the CAO's office, and the $200,000 will come from the existing contract amount. Thank you. In terms of acknowledgments, again, we'd like to thank the Board of Supervisors for its leadership, its commitment and patience with regard to this very important item that is an important implementation of the constitutional rights of defendants. I'd like to thank Sofia Almanza and Cecilia Herrera for their work on this matter, as well as interacting with the conflict defender. I'd like to thank the District Attorney's Office for its unwavering support in general, and in particular for this matter, because it does involve one of the most important, significant, and serious prosecutions in the history of Tulare County. We'd like to thank the Tulare County Superior Court, its executive officer, and the presiding judge for its support, and then County Council for its review and suggested revision of the proposed amendment. And then finally, I'd like to thank Mr. Allen for his diligence and good faith in working with this office. and also the auditor with regard to its help in reviewing this matter. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or comments from board members? I do believe Mr. Allen is here. If you would like to make any comments.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman, Supervisor Ennis, Supervisor Crocker, Supervisor Worthy, Supervisor Sheklian, Mr. Spada, and Ms. Peterson. My name is David Allen, and I am the conflict attorney. I have the unduly task of replacing a gentleman by the name of Jay Powell, who had been doing this position for about 30 some odd years. And I had some pretty big shoes to fill as a result, because I have a sneaking suspicion most of you know Mr. Powell. What I have tried to do is take what Mr. Powell had done and basically bring it to a new level. And I hope that I have done that. I have basically brought us into the computer age. Mr. Powell, love him to death. He did a lot of stuff in writing, note-taking, journals and stuff, and submitted that to the auditor's office. My paralegal, Maggie Valenzuela, has taken it one step further. We have created Excel spreadsheets, and so it's easier for the CAU's office to review the documentations and the caseloads and the ancillary expenses that I'm entrusted in using. And I would first like to thank Mr. Spada and his staff for the great cooperation that we have received, and it made this transition a lot smoother, and so we can continue the good service that we are providing the Tulare County Superior Court and the county and all of the defendants that we are assigned to represent. I have created several new teams which has assisted in the courts and trying to alleviate continuances, better handle the caseloads. I met with all the judges before I even decided to put a proposal in for this position, and basically asked them, what is the biggest complaint that you guys have? And their biggest complaint was, we don't have attorneys assigned specifically to our departments because we want to know who we can rely upon. Mr. Powell would assign us cases, and I could have, let's say, 5 cases in one day, and I could be spread out to 5 different departments. Well, all the judges want you right then, right now, and because I was on the conflict panel for over 15 years, I've had judges say, don't leave. Okay, I've got a bailiff walking up whispering in my ear saying Department 4 needs you. Judge Collegian in Department 5 says, don't leave. What do I do? Judge Collegian has me, so I don't move. By assigning specific attorneys now to specific departments, we've resolved that problem. And the judges are very, very happy that I have done that. I am very proactive. I'm in court on a daily basis. I meet with all the judges on a regular basis. What problems do we have? How can we solve this problem? And try to solve the problems before they ever get into a huge, bigger problem. That way, we can keep things flowing and making everything move smoothly. I also meet with the juvenile court judges. We have a quarterly meeting to discuss the new laws that have come in place, specifically Prop 57, which now changed the way that the district attorney's office files charges on juveniles, and so we're trying to figure out how we address all of those issues. Now to deal with probably the biggest thing that's on the board's mind is the Red Soul case. I understand that is a very big issue and concern that this board has. I call it my budget buster. This is the biggest case in Tulare County history. I recently attended the death penalty seminar in San Diego, and I was talking to some other attorneys, specifically ones that handle the conflict in other counties, and they said they've never had a case that has involved 86 defendants, or actually 81 defendants at one time. And they say, how do you do it? And I said, it's not easy and it's not fun. But we've been able to try to do it. We had to get 52 outside attorneys from our conflict to come in and assist in representing the defendants. The problem that we had is we had to go to Kern County, Fresno County, Kings County, because our own, what I would call our in-house attorneys, just cannot represent more than one person because they may have a conflict. And so we have to really look closely at a conflict in making sure that everybody has the appropriate representation. As these attorneys that were hired on realized, I don't want to deal with, 40, 50,000 pages of discovery. I now want out. So what I did is I took those defendants that were represented by the outside attorneys, and I went to some of our in-house attorneys and said, okay, you guys have reviewed the cases. We have this person here. Are you able to stand up and say, I don't have a conflict in representing this person? I've been able to do that with all of the defendants that the attorneys have requested to be relieved, except for one. I did have to bring in another outside attorney to represent one individual, and thank goodness that person was able to resolve his case fairly quickly, and so it was very, very minimal additional cost to the county. I have spoken with our Assemblyman Devin Mathis to see if there is any special state funding that is available, because this is a very unique, hopefully once in a career or once in a lifetime type of case, that we only have to deal with this one time and never have to deal with it again. He referred me to his chief of staff, and I haven't heard back from him yet to see if they can find any specific funding for the county, so we can either try to recoup some of the money that we have spent, or to try to assist in any future monies that we're going to have to expend on this case.
David, excuse me.
Sure.
I think I recall that there have been some boutique legislation passed to help counties deal with some of these, and that may be the way you have to go forward. I don't know if there's a specific fund. You may actually have to seek a legislative request and appropriation for specific needs based upon a need basis type thing. But that would be one.
I'll check into that, because I was hoping that there might be just some pool of money that's just sitting out there that this legislation is, oh yeah, we've had this money, let's just go ahead and write you guys a big fat check. But here again, I'm also love Disneyland, and so I'm living in Fantasyland, so to speak. But what I'm trying to do is take a very, very bad financial situation and try to make it as plausible as possible. And it's not easy to do, especially, this is my first year doing this. And here I've had to come back a couple of times and said, we need additional funds. And believe me, it's not a fun thing to do. Every time I see Mr. Spada, it's like going to the principal's office. Love him to death. We have great conversations, but, I kind of walk in going, okay, got to explain myself today, but, he's been great. His staff has been amazing in helping out, just not only on the Red Soul case, but just in everything in general. So if you guys have any questions that I can assist you in answering, so we're trying to keep this as fiscally, under control as possible.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Supervisor Crocker?
Thank you. I was going to ask about examples, but I think you provided them in your comments as far as how we use or what potential conflicts there might be. I would suggest that if we do think that legislative action or something's necessary, that we call up our lobbyist, Mr. Yoder, to assist with that. And then I guess my question is, why are we using funds for the 2018-19 fiscal year for this, for the $200,000 rather than next year?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we're doing it in order to cover the request rather than go to another funding source. We are going to try to manage this contract by looking to future funds and shifting them back. It's an accounting technique, but this way we don't have to provide additional funding from an outside source.
So we're anticipating that we won't need the additional $200,000, and 2018-19, or that gives us more flexibility to?
It gives us more flexibility. We can't predict what's going to happen as a practical matter. In your packet, there is an observation that there may be a request for another $1 million next fiscal year to handle the Red Soul case.
If I may, because the contract ends December 31st, 2018, that fiscal year still has 6 more months, but they have the full allocation of the ancillary services in that fiscal year. So what we're actually doing is, instead of allowing the $400,000 in that fiscal year of only 6 months, we're taking the $200,000 that would have been utilized in the January 1st to the June 30th time period and applying it to now, since with the Red Soul case, the funds are needed immediately.
And any future costs, one of the things that we really have to be leery of is that the district attorney's office still hasn't made a determination yet whether or not they're going to seek the death penalty on any of the individuals yet. I understand that they're in the process of doing it. I've had multiple conversations with Mr. Ward on this issue. Him and his staff have been great in handling this case. He's got 4 or 5 attorneys that are just assigned just to deal with the Red Soul case, which makes my life a lot easier because I know who I can go to in answering some of these questions. So if they do decide to seek the death penalty on any of these cases, then our costs are going to go up. I'm very hopeful that if he does seek the death penalty on any of the individuals, that there will be attorneys that we've already assigned to our in-house attorneys. When I did reassign the attorneys, that I looked at the ones that were what I would call the heavy hitters, so to speak, the ones that are the most culpable, the multiple murders and that type of thing, and then brought them back to our in-house attorneys. That way I don't have to pay one of the outside attorneys an exorbitant amount of money to represent somebody on a death penalty case. And then you guys are really going to hate me because then I'm going to have to come back again and again and again just to try to maintain this.
Every time you come back, just bring a book about strategic management, and you'll keep Spada happy. You'll get as much money as you need. He saw some requests for support from the board. Tell him what to do, but that's just
I'm trying to keep Mr. Spada happy.
All right.
So we get no reimbursement from the state on this?
No, not at this time.
I'm going to follow up another phone call with Mr. Mathis and see if he's found anything. But if the board can, use their lobbyist or find somebody,
I would have you,
I do.
Mr. Allen. I'd have you speak with Julieta Martinez. She's our chief of staff and legislative director. She can help you get in contact with Mr. Yoder and see if there's anything that you can do on that end.
Absolutely, I'd be more than happy to.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? If not, the chair will. There is a request being made by the CAO. Is there any other public comment related to this?
Yes, I would like to read into the record the requested action, especially in light of County Council making some revisions. So may I have the slide up, please, the requested action? Thank you. The first item is to receive the report regarding the review of the Conflict Public Defender Services Agreement administered by the Allen Law Firm, Inc. 2, approve amendment to agreement number 27554 dated April 1st, 2016 to December 31, 2018 between the County of Tulare and Allen Law Firm, Inc. and the Law Office of Marcus Turigian to increase the amount of the contract by $300,000 for costs associated with the Red Soul case and to shift $200,000 in ancillary costs allocated in the agreement for year 4, 2018-2019 to year 2, 2016-2017, and I'd like to add a third item, and to approve the OD 308.
Okay, I did see our DA start standing up before Mr. Spada leaned in, and I knew he wouldn't pass up an opportunity to speak. Without no further ado.
Good morning. I'm just here to let the chairman know that when you receive jury summons for every day of your scheduled vacation, don't look at me. No, it's my pleasure to be here, and I'll do anything to support the board, Mr. Spada and Mr. Allen. I do want to say there is some good news in this. Of the 80-some defendants, there are only about 20% that are still remaining. There have been a lot of cases that have closed. We feel in the office that there are more that should close. But what's remaining are serious, potentially life crimes. So I think of about 20, we have about 18 or 19 that are life crimes. But like Mr. Allen, and so those are going to be in our system for a while. I do apologize. We will have a decision on, I hope to have a decision by the end of this week. We try to do it sooner, but as Mr. Allen's aware, we're not able to do that. And as you can imagine, that's not a decision that we rush into. So there is some good news, but this is a long-term plan that we've got. There's going to be some burden for the county, our office, and Mr. Allen's office for the next year or so going. And I'll answer any questions that you've got. But we've done this, thank you, Mr. Spada, under budget every year. So I just want to make sure that if you have any questions, we're here to answer them.
And thank you for that explanation in detail. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not doing this because we want to do this. We're doing this because we're protecting the victims and protecting our county and our residents from what was a very heinous group of individuals.
And this is one of the few times that we can say, because of law enforcement's actions, over a dozen incidents were thwarted where there was a conspiracy to commit murder and the plan was put into motion and law enforcement stopped that from happening. It's rarely that we can ever stand up and say we prevented a murder from happening. We're showing in court, we've done it and we will, that over a dozen of those incidents were stopped because of this action. So as we said years ago, once law enforcement's actions were completed, now the burden's on us and we're happy to do it. So.
Good, thank you. All right.
I would move to approve the requested actions set forth by the CEO.
All right, we have a motion by Supervisor Worthley, a second by Supervisor Ennis. Please vote. All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And that does conclude our open session finally. Council, do we have need for closed session?
We do, Mr. Chairman. Items C and E through H, and there may be a report out of closed session.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.